Welcome in. It is Wednesday. Thank you for joining us here on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. I'm Nick Sturtevant. Carlene Bragg is here in studio with me. How are you doing, Carlene?
I'm good.
Nice flannel.
Thank you.
Nice flannel.
It's
I like
cold. Well, it's cold in this studio.
Yeah.
And it's cold out.
Yeah.
And I was gonna wear a flannel, and here we are.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Brittany Van Voorhees, meteorologist Brittany Van Voorhees is here. Brittany, she's gonna have to keep that flannel on standby because that cold weather is not going anywhere.
I mean, Carlene looks so cute in every single thing that she wears, but she especially needs to have a decent amount of flannels over the next few weeks.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
I'm already over it.
Yeah, I am too. I feel like it was
It's
just
so
yesterday.
crazy to me because you guys are both from the Carolinas.
But
Yeah.
but these storms come like snow and ice.
Mm-hmm.
Like they
Well,
come
we're not
every.
talking about snow and ice. You're talking about the cold.
But yeah, I mean, okay. The cold, it gets cold here,
gets
but
cold.
I feel like the past few years it seemed milder.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm saying this in front of a meteorologist who has
No,
all the data in front of
you
me.
are correct. We've had some mild winters. last
So
You like that?
we've been through some cold winters.
Sure
Hey,
have.
Larry Sprinkle. Larry Sprinkle just walked by the studio. I just had to say hey.
Well,
Hey,
can we
Larry.
say really quick
Yes.
before we get into the forecast? Last day for our beloved Michelle Bowden.
Yeah.
Who has
Last
been
year-
with,
oh,
at
yeah,
the station
yeah,
for
yeah.
19 years.
Wow,
She
clever,
is
Michelle.
the best.
Yes.
Phenomenal. We know. We've seen her stories.
Yeah.
Always doing the things that really matter to people, the important stories. I guess I just said the same thing twice. But so sad. She's phenomenal. And so if you've ever been impacted by one of Michelle's stories, just keep her a little close to your heart today, because I think, it's going to be a big change, right? She's been in
Yeah.
the industry for decades. I mean, she's been here for 19 years,
19
and she's done
years,
so
yeah.
many really important things. So
Yeah.
I just hope she gets the recognition she deserves.
And we will be able to see more of her stories
Yeah, during
as
the
During the Olympics, yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's going to be great to see that, because she tells incredible stories. She highlights incredible people, organizations. So
Right.
Yeah, I was trying to explain what kind of stories she does to, I was at the gym earlier, to my friend who does not watch local TV, for example. And I said, think about something that happens to someone that's really horrible and they turn it into something positive.
Yeah.
I said, those are the stories that she does. It's like
Yeah.
whatever the positive thing was that they
Right.
were able to get out of it. So
shout out to Michelle Bowden.
Yeah.
Michelle.
19 years here, but put in a lot of work, a lot of great work here and in the industry overall. So yeah, shout out to her.
yeah. Have to. Also a person like you guys who does not like the cold because she's from Fort Lauderdale.
I didn't know she was from Fort Lauderdale.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, hey, man, the cold.
Yeah.
You know, it seems like it was just yesterday. Carlene was saying, I can't wait to go Splish Splash this weekend.
I know.
It felt like it was
We're
just
far
yesterday.
from splish splashing.
We're
Oh,
very
no.
far.
We are.
That's what happens
extremely
when you
far.
have 3 record highs at the end of December and 170-degree day at the beginning of January.
Okay, Brittany.
One extreme to another, Nicholas.
So, Brittany, what are we facing? I asked you from a scale of 1 to 10 before the show started, and you answered it right before we got on.
Mm-hmm.
The likelihood of snow.
I think there is a pretty good chance that we're going to see some snow this weekend.
Pretty good. Pretty good is what she says.
Now, I think the key here,
I'm smiling, by the way.
I think the key here is how much. I posted this, now it feels like a year ago because it's been so long, but 2 weekends ago where we had that small chance of a few flurries, I posted a graphic that actually Chief Meteorologist Brad Panovich had made, but I posted the graphic and used it on air and then was talking about it in one of our mobile shorts. One thing that's going to be important this weekend, actually I'm just going to pull it up, is managing expectations. Now, we haven't actually put together a forecast yet, but I'm going to show you a map in just a second that shows the likelihood that we will see 1 inch of snow. And so the reason why that's important is kind of understanding like what 1 inch means. And this is not us saying like, oh my gosh, we think people are dumb. They don't know what that means. That's absolutely not the case. It's just sometimes like what we perceive to be something is not always what it is. So this was the graphic that Brad made. Can you drop the lower third for just a sec,
Yes.
Carl? Sorry. I didn't think about the fact that you couldn't see the ground. So on the way to the left, Nick, that's a trace.
Okay.
That is like seeing a flake. That's a trace.
Okay.
Dusting to 1/2 inch. That's the middle. That is essentially, think like grassy surfaces are covered with like a
Okay.
light. You probably can still see a little bit of green, but you're not seeing really a lot on the roads or anything because obviously they're so warm with like cars driving back and forth. And then that's 1 inch of snow all the way on the right. So you'll get like a coating on everything,
See, there you go.
but it's not dense, you know. So
Okay.
if you have sweet little baby angels like Turkey and Roger, our little dogs, yes, of course their paws are going to make a mark, but we're not making snowmen. We're not getting in snowball
We're not
fights.
what New York City dealt with over the weekend.
1,000%.
Yeah.
And like, you know, when you have the brother-sister relationship, Nick, like I always say you and I do,
Yeah.
we're not going to be doing a snowball fight out in the parking
Oh,
lot.
no.
There will be a little
Snow
bit of snow.
angels?
I guess it depends on how dense you want your angel to be.
It's gonna
But I'm
disappear really
happy
quickly.
if we get an inch, Carly and I will happily do a snow angel with you.
Okay.
You heard it here first, folks.
I don't like snow.
Okay, so this is the graphic, Nick. So moderate impacts from a chance of snow, which is essentially an inch. That's the latest percentage here in Charlotte. All right, it's going to zoom in
Okay.
for a second. About an 80 to 90%.
Oh, our
So we
friends
could get about an
east.
inch.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah. Now, yes, that is true. So areas east of us, over toward the immediate coast, do see a higher chance. The key here is that we are going to see really deep cold air that's not going anywhere. So if you remember from this past weekend when we were talking about the ice and the fact that what pretty much everything we got was sleet and freezing rain, the reason why we were back and forth as to how much of each was because we knew that there was going to be too much warm air in the mid-levels to actually see just snow. So the only places that actually saw snow in Charlotte were up in the mountains. Now, I know a lot of the sleet looked like snow, but if we got a lot of the pictures, they were just those tiny little ice pellets. So it actually was sleet for the most part. Well, that was because we had cold air at the ground, high up in the atmosphere, but too much warm air in the middle. Well, that is not a problem now. We got plenty of cold air. So the good thing with this system coming up this weekend is that it's kind of snow or nothing. If we have too much moisture that stays offshore, we won't get anything. But it's not going to be the distinguish between snow and ice, which as a meteorologist and somebody who cares about the roadways and us not being in another bad situation, with icy spots, that is good news. Now, that doesn't mean that if there's snow on the roads, you can't still see a flash freeze and get a little bit of glaze, but there's a big difference between 1 inch of snow, for example. I'm not saying exactly that's what we're getting. I'm just using this example. There's a big difference between 1 inch of snow and it melting and getting a freeze there than what we had this weekend, which was freezing rain and drizzle, Saturday night, then all the sleet on Sunday, and then more on top of that. So it's not going to be as dense, as what we saw this past weekend. So cold air is not going anywhere. We know that. This is our jet stream pattern. What it's showing for you here on Sunday is essentially a big, deep trough that's going to dig across the southeast. This is what we call a cutoff trough. So the regular jet stream for both the subtropical and the northern jet stream, it essentially ebbs and flows. Think of it like a little squiggle line back and forth as we go through really every single week, every single day across the country. But when you get a big dip in the jet stream, sometimes it can kind of cut off and allow for cold air to stick around for a long period of time. So I think it's important to note that this cold air really is not going anywhere anytime soon. We're also going to see a decent amount of energy because we have all this moisture that will develop across the low pressure system just off the coast. So what you're seeing here, that little circle just near Jacksonville, Charlotte, and Raleigh, just offshore, that's showing where the low pressure is going to set up. So as of right now, it's setting up in a perfect spot that we would get moisture here in the Carolinas. It would essentially throw that back, similar to the way that a tropical system, can kind of throw moisture with those bands of rain into our area. This time, of course, it's not going to be rain. It's going to be snow. So right now, we're locked in. It's pretty rare for us to go weather impact alert this far in advance, but there is a lot of confidence, similar to last weekend, that we will see some type of snow across portions of the Charlotte Piedmont and areas east across the Carolinas. Now, again, last weekend, it was ice. How much we're going to get of each, XYZ, versus this weekend, we know that if we get anything, it's going to be snow, and it will be likely higher the further east you go. This is kind of the latest setup here we're expecting is cold air again stays locked in. A little bit of moisture wraps around Friday into Saturday, but the majority of this does look to be Saturday and into Saturday night. Early Sunday, it should be out of here pretty quickly. Now, there will likely be, just like there was with this system, some northwest flow on the backside for the mountains. So if folks did see northwest flow snow, what would that have been, Monday morning? Honestly, the days kind of rolled together recently. But just so many storms, so many cold. Yeah, so Monday morning, we saw that northwest flow behind the system. So if you saw that this past Monday, you'll likely see that again, but this time it'll be Sunday. We know it's been cold. Again, I don't think I have to tell anybody that. I know people are looking forward to the potential that we will see snow. And again, right now it is looking good. We will likely put out our first snow map forecast, likely tonight, if not very early tomorrow morning. Chief Meteorologist Brad Panovich is very, very good at wanting to talk about it, as a team and kind of make sure we're all on the same page. And so we'll probably have some of those conversations again as early as tonight. One thing I do want to point out is that because the low pressure system is going to be so close to us, we will be pretty breezy on Saturday. That in the near term doesn't seem to impact us too much here locally across the Piedmont. 30 miles an hour is what we had this past weekend. But the reason why I think this is important is what we've realized, I think, especially from hurricane season, and Nick, Carly, and I think you guys can both agree, there's so many people in the Carolinas, but specifically here in Charlotte, that are either from other parts of the Carolinas or have friends or family who live there, have houses, property. Carlene's mom is just outside of Charleston. Nick, your family's up in the Winston-Salem, High Point area. So we have those different spots. So when we forecast a lot for the Carolinas, we don't want to just pretend like Charlotte's like a little bubble and hole not be worried about what's happening elsewhere. So with that being said, the immediate coast, specifically Outer Banks, are going to see very gusty conditions this weekend. Ooh. This will probably cause us to see similar views probably on NC 12, like what we had with some of the offshore storms over hurricane season. So Aaron, Chantal, I'm just, the names. And so I think this is important because flooding could be an issue. Some of their roads could be impacted by, while we're getting snow, theirs could be snow and a mix of overwash coming in from the beaches.
I think we're going to be talking to Sam Walker too tomorrow.
Okay.
Perfect person to talk to.
Yes.
Yeah. And so again, I think that they're probably preparing similarly to the way that they did when they had offshore storms over the summer.
Oh wow, I got to check. I got some extended family in Elizabeth City, so gotta check.
And so it's just because they're closer to the low. You think closer. Low pressure is low pressure. That's what a hurricane is. So obviously, I'm not again trying to compare. I'm just saying hurricanes, tropical storms, a nor'easter, they're all low pressure. So the closer you are to the center, the more likely you are to see gusty winds. So right now, this time period, I backed it up for a second so we could see this again, is midnight on Saturday. It looks like the peak would be Saturday, late morning, early afternoon. But look at this. Sunday at 2 a.m. Do you see anything that stands out to you on these winds?
The purple, bluish.
That's snow. But the wind.
75. Yeah, the wind.
That's a Category 1 hurricane.
Okay. Wow. Okay.
So again, the impacts are different, right, with every single storm, but I just want people to kind of be aware that the impacts near the coast could be substantial for some of the wind, again, on top of the fact that they will likely see some winter weather. So we'll have to obviously get a little more fine-tuned on the forecast to see exactly how that will impact them. Something else other than just the overwash that I think about is oftentimes our coastal areas. You know, I lived in Myrtle Beach for a few years. Obviously, you guys, again, were from other parts of the Carolinas. You know, they do like the beach renourishment projects, things like that. A lot of times those happen during the off season because hurricane season is 6 months of the year. So it's the other 6 months that they essentially have to kind of get things going. So I am hoping that this will not impact anything that's actively happening there. So of course, Sam, I'm sure can provide better context for that. So still pretty breezy by Sunday night, but the low will be pulling away from us. So right now our team, you know, we put the weather impact alert into effect. It's for Saturday, Sunday. First because of the snow potential, then because of the cold air. We did drop into the lower teens earlier this week. Thankfully did not get into the single digits here in Charlotte. So still the last time we were that cold was 9 degrees back in Christmas Eve 2022. So that still holds at least for now. But notice Sunday and Monday morning, 14 and 10 respectively. And once again, similar to what we had the last few days, highs barely getting out of the 30s. So anything, again, we still have on the ground here that's especially in the shade that hasn't melted yet, that could fall on top of that. That could create additional issues. I would never forecast school or business closures, so almost a week out. But I would anticipate there will probably be similar issues, maybe not in the widespread nature, but probably similar issues to what we've had this week with the refreeze and just a lot of moisture on the ground. I mean, think about the difference in a spot that you've been to, even like in a parking lot, of where it has been in the direct sunshine and has nothing, and it melted pretty much immediately Monday afternoon, and then the places that are in the shade.
Yeah, I mean, I still got ice.
We still got that spot right near here on the bridge to get to the station.
I mean, my entire sidewalk in my apartment complex is still iced over.
Yep.
Yeah, it's actually funny because our dog park, Nick, you haven't been to my apartment, but maybe one day I'll invite you over. But Carlene obviously knows. She's been there 1,000 times. But you know how the dog park, because of the way the sun hits, like most of it's in the sun. That's where Turkey and Roger run around. But you know, that's that corner that's always shaded. It still looks like it sleeted yesterday.
Yep.
And then like, so it's got like this pile, and then everything else is just green again because it's got like that fake grass.
Yeah.
And and you know that it happens, but I still think when it happens, you're shocked. Like the sidewalks are all clear, at least again at my apartment complex, but then it's like everything that was under like the plants.
Yeah.
It's still again, it looks like it happened yesterday.
I mean,
there's
that's why
like piles of sleet under a plant, but then like the sidewalks are completely clear. And you're like, you forget that it happens that quickly.
That's why I haven't run outside. I'm like, I'm not chancing it at all.
Yeah.
Slick spot.
Yeah.
I see.
You know, once you get to a certain age, Nick, you can't risk it like you used to. Just kidding. No, you're a fantastic runner.
You know,
I'm sure you'll be
safe.
okay.
No,
it is.
Doing the right
It's
thing.
safety.
I am not a big fan of the videos. I'm going on a quick tangent of folks running in the snow and the ice storm. I'm like,
silly. Don't do that.
Yeah, it's kind
I'm
of
not a
like
big
the way,
fan.
Sam, I feel, again, you feel,
Yeah.
I feel like I've used a hurricane example so many times, but it's like when someone goes running like during a tropical storm.
Yeah.
It's just not worth the risk.
It's not safe. It's not
Do
safe.
it. Be smart. Nick, you're smart.
So I know that we have winter storm fatigue right now,
Yeah.
not
Yep,
just
yep,
like
yep.
us in the newsroom, but I feel like a lot of people across the Carolinas,
Yeah.
across the Charlotte area. I do not anticipate this being a big deal. And I know people get excited about snow. If we get a higher chance of snow, but it's not super impactful, you know, to people's livelihoods and property, that's going to be great. But just like this past weekend, we will get through it. I don't think this is something people like need to be worried about or freak out about.
The milk and bread.
Yeah. Now, if you still have winter storm snacks and stuff from last weekend, if you still have your, you know, the phone bank, you know, the plug-in banks that we were talking about, I mean, have them just in case.
Yeah.
But you just don't prepare necessarily for a chance for ice the same way because the power outage risks and things like that are less. Now, this one, the gusty winds, again, especially near the coast, will be a little bit worse. So that could impact those areas higher. But I'm just saying we had 25 to 30 mile per hour winds after this storm system. And
Yeah.
because the ice was less, or I guess the ice was on the lower end of the forecasted totals, we didn't see as many issues as we thought. So I think it's always good to be prepared, especially this time of year.
Oh, yeah.
Brad made a really good point. I always say Chief Meteorologist Brad Panovich, and I'm like, everybody knows who he is. But Brad made a really good point on social media, I think it was yesterday or the day before, about people saying that they were going to return like their generators.
Yeah.
and he might have already talked about this on here. I just think it's a good reminder. Well, first of all, he gave 1,000 examples as to why you might need one. So he is smarter than I am, so you should go read the post. But essentially, in the moral of the story was, you don't know what you need to prepare for in the future. So if you kind of already locked in, don't return it.
Yeah, just have it.
Yeah, play out the next few weeks, like see how it goes. We could have a storm this weekend. Heck, maybe in 4 weeks we have another storm. I mean, I hope not.
Yeah.
But you just need, it's never bad, I think, to be prepared.
Or test it to see how it works and functions for you.
That's actually a really good point.
So
Yeah.
when
know where
need
you
it,
would put it.
Yeah.
You know, all those things.
So
That's
you're
a
not
great
fumbling
point.
around
Right.
when something
Yeah.
happens.
It's the same reason why we talked about like knowing where your water valve was, just in
Yeah.
case you had a pipe burst. Yeah, it's not bad to know where things are. Again, I don't think that that's going to be as big of a risk this weekend because yes, we're going to be bitterly cold like we are now, but it's not as much of an ice risk. But yeah, it's not bad to have a plan. And maybe this past weekend you were nervous and again have fatigue from the winter storm. Maybe that was a good, test for you and your family and stuff to know like what you would do. Again, it's not the same, but oftentimes the preparations are similar for a tropical system. Medications, important documents, all those things. Again, this is not going to be the same as last weekend, but it's good to know where to have those things so you're not like rushing out to get them last minute. And it's going to be cold nonetheless. So I think that's definitely something we have to keep a close eye on. I know one of the concerns this morning, which was another reason why I think CMS probably did go remote, was still the roadways were still a little bit icy.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that this is why. This is just like from a meteorology perspective. And just how cold it is. Like, you don't want kids out of the bus
On the
stop,
bus
you know?
stop.
Yeah.
So-
And then the bus, and then it's hard to thaw out on the bus.
Yeah.
I don't know what the AC system
Think
is
about
like
how many
on the bus.
windows they have.
Yeah.
Like that's got to be cold.
Yeah.
So again, we're not saying we're not the experts who make those
Right.
decisions, but it's important to just kind of be aware of these things. So, yeah.
Brittany Van Voorhees, meteorologist Brittany Van Voorhees. You know who she is. Thank you for the insight. Thank you for the forecast, Brittany.
Of course. Thanks for having me, Nick and
and-
Carlene.
You're welcome.
Like you said, we're going to get through it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're here for you every step of the way. Just like last weekend, if things do trend to higher totals or they look to be more impactful, we're going to be here. So
Yep.
you don't have to go anywhere else to get the information.
Because Brittany will be here all weekend.
Thanks, Nick. You're not going to come hang out this weekend?
It depends. It depends. We shall see.
Okay.
We shall see. I'm not going to say no. I'm not going to say yes. Just
Yeah.
going to say
Shall
we shall
see.
see.
All right. Well, I don't hope to see you because I don't want you to have to work on your days off. But if I do see you, it's always a pleasure.
If I do have to work, it's in service of the community.
Mhm,
Right.
Exactly.
And look, working with great people, I don't mind it. So
Thanks, Nick.
Thanks, Nick.
With that being said, you're welcome, guys. Let's head to break. We'll be back here in just 2 minutes here on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. Welcome back here on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. I'm Nick Sturdivant. Get excited because Charlotte FC season is almost back. Preseason is officially underway for Charlotte FC, and the early action is giving fans plenty to get excited about. So Jay, Monreal, Carlene, they were here as they spoke with Charlotte FC radio announcer about this upcoming season after a pretty good season this past season. Take a listen in.
Well, preseason is back in full swing for Charlotte FC, and there is a special announcement coming March 7th. Here to share all the details is Will Pelagic, the radio voice of Charlotte FC. Will, thanks for joining us here in the Live Impact studio.
Thank you, Jane. Appreciate you having us.
What do Charlotte FC fans need to know?
Well, our home opener comes on March the 7th. Very much looking forward to that against Austin FC. Tickets at $40, getting you ready for what should be a very fantastic season coming up here. And I also think the greatest part about our season this year is that we've had the most great response when it comes to our giveaway promotional schedule. We've got 3 bobbleheads on tap. We started out right away with the party shirt as well on the home opener day, March the 7th, and getting folks ready for the season too. We also have a fantastic party coming up February, which I'm sure we'll talk about as well.
Yeah, everybody loves a good party, don't we? Charlotte FC fans love a good party.
Yes.
So what are we talking about?
So our kit launch comes up on the 10th of February, which is Tuesday night. It's going to be at the Fillmore, just off of Uptown, and very much looking forward to that. For the first time this year, we will have a concert to go along with the kit launch with a major North Carolina artist. You are not going to want to miss who this is. I'm not allowed to tell you who it is.
Oh, I was going to say, can we make guesses?
But I told my wife who it was, and she was like, "Oh, we have to be there."
We have
She
to
flipped
be
out,
there.
and it was one of those things where it's like, "Do you know this person?" And she's like, "Yes, yes."
Oh, okay.
One of
All right.
those.
Like a stadium guy, or
I would say between an arena and stadium person. Between arena and
between
stadium.
an arena and stadium.
Okay.
All right, we're gonna keep on guessing.
Looking forward
from
to
North
it.
Carolina.
From North Carolina.
Okay.
All right, and so that's gonna be March 7th or February.
February the 10th is when that is. That's our kit launch, and then our home opener is March the 7th for a great schedule. We've had a lot of great home games in a row. I think we're playing 5 home games in a row to start March, and going into April, we have Miami as part of that run as well. So it'll be interesting to see how Lionel Messi comes. Having him early in the season is a little bit different, which is nice for us, and also just getting ourselves back to hopefully that form we had in the early part of the season last year, where we got all the way up to first place, finished 4th in the league, and hopefully even higher now this year.
All right, so being with them now a couple seasons, what are you most excited about?
Well, I'm excited that it seems like now we've built up a core, and that's something that, I was talking about this with somebody else earlier, and it's interesting to see how people treat you in the league when you've been there for a while, and they start to say, okay, who are you going to go out and spend money on? Who are you going to go out and try and get? But in reality, what Charlotte FC has done is they've built a great mix of a roster with people with Premier League experience in Europe, great top leagues across the world, and also teams that are really very envious of our up-and-coming talent, too, because we're now starting to replenish the roster with homegrown players, with players who've come from our second team. Those are the teams that have the most sustainable success in MLS. It's not the teams that are constantly turning over their roster every year and trying to spend big money. The real key is to make sure you can build a core, build a system. You've got a coach now who's the longest tenured manager in Charlotte's history, in Dean Smith, and he knows what he wants out of his players, and the players know what he wants out of them.
Yeah, that definitely says something when players come, they stay, and build towards the future and invest their time and energy and talents here. What can fans, how do fans get involved?
Well, of course, you can get involved always on our social channels at Charlotte FC on Twitter and Instagram, and also on the website charlottefootballclub.com. That's where you can get your tickets. Again, $40. March the 7th is our home opener against Austin. Again, fantastic season coming up here. Our schedule is a little bit different this year because of the World Cup. There'll be kind of a very quick blitz of games, February, March, April, May, and then we'll break in May for the World Cup. By the way, also, of course, fantastic event at the stadium for the U.S. men's national team match against Senegal. One of their final tune-up games coming up for the World Cup is at Bank of America Stadium on May 31st. So another great event there. We'll have a chance possibly to see Tim Ream. Could potentially see also former Charlotte FC forward Patrick Agyeman as part of that squad as well. So we have all that. Then we break for the World Cup. We resume back in July. And we resumed back in a big way, taking on Atlanta United in our first game back from off the break. So that's something that's a very, very intriguing game to kind of kick off the second half of the season. MLS All-Star Game is here as well. This has the opportunity to be one of the biggest soccer seasons in Charlotte's history in just events, standalone games, and obviously also just the way the team is playing as well.
Putting it on the map right there, Charlotte, Queen City soccer. Love it. All right. Will, we thank you for joining us here in the
Thank you
Live
so much for
Impact
having us.
studio. Keep it hot.
Yeah.
Stay hot, man. All right, and we will be right back on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus.
All right, I still got to make my first match. I haven't been to a Charlotte FC match.
They're
What am I
fun.
doing?
They're a lot of fun.
I got
the energy
really-
is really good. Especially, you should go to like the first couple ones, like the opener or something. You know, the vibes would be like,
Yeah, it's super high.
yeah.
Man, we did a lot on Charlotte FC
Yep.
this year, covered the team extensively. Some incredible interviews that we,
Sure
especially in
have.
the evening Live Impact News edition. All right, so yeah, I'm excited. Carlene's
They
excited.
said there's got a lot of new merch this year
Merch?
too.
Okay.
Me and you are merch people. Me and you appreciate good merch. Charlotte
love-
FC does have good merch too. They just
love-
do.
Love some good merch.
They told me about some stuff they have, and I'm excited.
Okay, I'm excited. I'm excited.
If
I
you
was
go for
excited
anything,
before.
Go for the vibes and the merch.
I gotta go.
Yeah.
I've never been to a professional soccer match.
It's fun.
So I gotta
Lot
go.
of
I gotta
fun.
check that off. I might as well do it here in the Queen City.
Yeah.
Let's take a quick break. We'll be back here in just 2 minutes here on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. Welcome back here on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. I'm Nick Sturdivant. We are continuing to track the measles outbreak. There are new cases in South Carolina. The upstate has been sort of plagued with this outbreak, Spartanburg County to be specific. We're hearing from the Department of Public Health in South Carolina right now, press conference, getting an update on things there. Let's take a listen in.
Letting it harm others. It is our means to control this outbreak. As I've noted earlier, we're starting to see more cases in counties adjacent to Spartanburg. And so it's important to remember that the virus doesn't observe administrative boundaries. It can infect anyone who's exposed. The difference in the risk is the people who are vaccinated are largely protected. So people who are not vaccinated can get very sick and can also unintentionally pass it on to their children, to their parents, to their neighbors, to fellow church members. What happens is that someone who is infected can have early symptoms of the measles and not know it. They go shopping, they go to the movies, they go to a gym, and then they potentially can make others sick without even knowing that they're infectious. So this is the main reason for the need for that protection from the vaccine prior to exposure. And just a reminder that the MMR vaccine is widely available at many primary care providers' offices and pharmacies, at DPH Health Department clinics, and many children can receive the vaccine at no cost to the family through the VFC, or Vaccines for Children program, or through coverage by their health insurance. So as we continue to watch this daily surge in cases in South Carolina, DPH strongly encourages those who are not protected to take advantage of this opportunity to get protected against unexpected exposures and illnesses now, and help us stop this outbreak and protect our communities. And with that update, Casey, I'll turn it back to you for questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Bell. And for folks who are attending their first briefing, we ask that you raise your virtual hand and we'll call on you in the order in which you raise your hand. If you don't mind asking one question at a time, that way we can get through everyone's questions. If you have additional questions, you can always re-raise your hand to rejoin the queue. But we'll go ahead and kick things off with Erica.
Hey guys, thank you so much. This is Erica Edwards with NBC News. Dr. Bell, thanks very much again for holding these briefings. I'm wondering if first you can just sort of address the magnitude of this milestone that South Carolina unfortunately has met, becoming the largest outbreak in recent history. And then I wondered if you could also speak a little bit more about what's involved for your staff regarding quarantine. Do you contact them daily? What are those conversations like? Do you offer vaccines, that kind of thing? Thank you so much.
Okay, I'll try to get to your questions in order. In terms of this milestone, once measles transmission began in our upstate area, we were very concerned at DPH about the possibility of spread given the low vaccination coverage in the upstate. And at that time, we actually raised alerts about the potential for ongoing transmission. And however, at that time, and as the weeks have gone on, we did not anticipate that South Carolina case counts in a matter of only 16 weeks would surpass the total number of cases reached in Texas over the course of 7 months. So this is a milestone that we have reached in a relatively short period of time, very unfortunately. And it's just disconcerting to consider what our final trajectory.
Well, it looks like that press conference is frozen right now, but here's what we have so far. Again, health officials giving an update from the South Carolina Department of Public Health on the ongoing measles outbreak. It looks like we got it back. So I'm going to take you back to this press conference. Again, we had some technical issues. Let's take you back now to Department of Public Health in South Carolina, giving an update on the measles outbreak.
Consider. I think your other question was about how
All right, it looks like that press conference froze again. Let's go to break. We'll be back here in just 2 minutes here on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. All right, welcome back here on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. I'm Nick Sturdivant. We want to get back to a press conference, virtual press conference that the South Carolina Department of Public Health is having right now, answering questions from reporters regarding that ongoing measles outbreak there. We're getting an update from officials. Let's take a listen in.
Courier. I'm curious about how many folks you have now doing contact tracing, because it looks like just over the last 3 weeks, you have more than 575 cases, something like an average of 27 a day. And I'm wondering how many folks you have who can take that on.
Yes, we've actually previously reported on the total number of staff we have from various areas of expertise who are supporting this outbreak response. So the actual number of those who are doing the case investigation and contact tracing, that's the largest proportion of our response staff. I don't have that actual figure for you now. But it is a tremendous workload, and for those frontline staff, what it means is that we're reaching out and appreciate the cooperation of people who are answering our questions to learn about when their symptoms began, where they might have been, to assist us in investigating this throughout the community, so we can also learn about public exposure. So that work is really critical and really important, and we have a large number of people who are working on that, and we have a large number of people, as has been reported, that we have to follow up on with the number of exposed that we've identified.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dr. Bell. And Deirdre?
Hi, this is Deidre McPhillips with CNN. Thanks for hosting this. I was wondering, we understand that HHS has provided, or they're working to provide $1.4 million in funding assistance for responding to this outbreak. And I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about plans to spend that money.
Well, we receive federal funding through various funding mechanisms, through a variety of grants that are designed for support for immunizations, for clinical services, for emergency preparedness. And so the funding streams come through different channels and have different criteria for how we can use that funding. But in terms of for this outbreak response, where funds are allowed to be used to support personnel, to support supplies and resources, to support vaccinations. That is both people who are administering the vaccines and the vaccine products themselves. So that's just a general overview of how we receive federal funding and how we must adhere to the requirements for how it can be spent. We carefully budget that money, and it's been very beneficial to our response so far.
Thank you, Dr. Bell. Carrie? And Carrie, you might be muted if you're talking.
All right, can you hear me now?
Yes.
This is Carrie Beal with Fox Carolina News. I had a question, with all this weather hitting us and schools being out, do you think that we might actually see a lull in cases maybe next week or the following week because people haven't been in school as much? We're supposed to get more snow this weekend, so school might be closed again Monday, Tuesday next week. So just wondering if that might be a little light at the end of the tunnel.
Not necessarily. It depends on people. It depends on what people do while they're not in school. So those school closures, as we look back at what happened during the holidays when people were not in school and they were out and about in the community, enjoying recreational activities and things like that. And for those who had been exposed, and as I mentioned earlier, may not know that they're carrying the virus and spreading it to others. So the impact of the weather, we simply cannot predict what that will mean. But when we think about the incubation period, we will look out from 7 to 10 days from now as long as 21 days to see how this might have impacted us with a retrospective look.
Thanks, Dr. Bell. And Lena?
Hi, Dr. Bell. It's Lena Sun from the Washington Post there. Thank you very much for doing this briefing. I was wondering if you could talk about given where we are in the outbreak, that it's not over and maybe hasn't even reached its peak, what are your thoughts about outreach, more mobile clinics. The vaccine uptake has not been great. Changes in strategy to try to boost vaccination?
Certainly. I mean, that encouraging vaccination and the protection that it offers is a focus, obviously, of what we want to achieve, higher vaccination coverage. But how we achieve that and sort of understanding what leads to hesitancy to getting that protection is what we want to continue to understand. And we do this through outreach in various ways. So we are continue to work and intensify our efforts to connect with community spokespersons, community leaders, those who are trusted, working with the faith community, faith leaders as possible, working with community-based organizations and community health workers who are who work within the communities and are most familiar with those groups, perhaps most trusted by those who are most impacted. And then our messaging is very important. We want to make sure that when we hear about myths or misinformation, that we put out science-based, evidence-based information about how the vaccines do work, what they do and do not do. And so all of that, the messaging, the outreach, and the promotion of the vaccination services are the pillars of our response. In terms of those mobile units, we know that uptake was not necessarily as high as we'd hoped for each of those various clinics, but we do know that uptake in other settings is important to pay attention to. So when we make people aware that you can get a vaccine at a local pharmacy or in a clinic, those are other options, and we are monitoring that as well. And we are seeing increases in vaccine uptake there, not as rapid as we'd like to see to do that catch up, because we're coming from behind from all those percentage points that we've lost from that herd immunity that we want to achieve.
Thanks, Dr. Bell. And Ann Thompson?
Thank you, Casey. Hi, Dr. Bell. My question for you is, why is this concentrated in Spartanburg County? Why does it have such a low vaccination rate? And what are you up against in trying to convince people to get vaccinated? Thank you.
Well, the concentration in Spartanburg County is, as I mentioned earlier, that we understood that vaccination coverage there in that area in Spartanburg County, in many of the schools in that area, is lower than in many other areas of the state. And so by comparison, people in other areas of the state with higher vaccination coverage are better protected. That's why we see more ongoing transmission completely predictably in an area of lower vaccination coverage. Why that is, I've spoken about this before. We have people making individual choices and have different reasons for vaccine hesitancy, vaccine resistance. And in our outreach efforts, we're trying to learn about those various reasons that people have for questioning the success of the vaccine historically, questions about the risks associated with the vaccines. We remind people of the very serious risks of the disease itself that people forget about as we look at more and more hospitalizations. That is part of our messaging, that there are severe complications from the disease. And so those are just a mention of how we're working to address this specifically in that community that is under-vaccinated.
Thank you. And Eduardo?
Hi, Doctor. Thank you. Eduardo Cuevas from USA Today. I wanted to ask, what do we know about the source of the outbreak? As I understand, the measles virus variant's consistent with other outbreaks in the United States last year. What does the variant tell you about the outbreak's origins? Thank you.
So the genotyping that they're doing on the measles virus specimens that they're collecting nationwide demonstrate that there is a great deal of similarity in what's circulating in all of the outbreak settings in the United States. What we need is actually the epidemiologic evidence and that piece of the investigation to help us identify the source, because without a significant variation in the genotyping from one site to the next, when we try and identify the sources, it is the investigation of where people have been, who they may have been in contact with. That is, in the short term and in the immediate response term, much more useful to us in terms of potentially identifying the source. The genotyping takes quite a long time to get the results from that back, and it's a different kind of analysis of the source of the virus compared to settings in this country and in other countries. So what that genotyping tells us is not the greatest measure without the epidemiologic evidence to tell us about the sources.
Thanks. And Leanne? And I'm not hearing anything, Leanne.
Hello? Hello?
I hear you now.
Hello? Okay, sorry. So Dr. Bell, I'm wondering if you can address school vaccine exemptions, both medical and religious. Can you tell us a little bit about the process for approving those and what do you think might be changed and might have contributed to this low vaccine rate in this area? Both private and public schools, please.
Yes, we have our requirements for our immunization requirements for school entry. Exceptions to those requirements are allowed by a medical exemption, which is if someone has had a reaction or has a medical indication for not receiving usually a particular vaccine. Someone can also get an exception if they are in catch-up, if they've transferred for another area and they're waiting on their records, and so they get an exception while the records catch up that document their immunization coverage. And then there is a religious exemption that can be obtained through one of our county health departments or online, where the parent or guardian will attest to them having a religious objection to receiving vaccines. We try and counsel those parents about the consequences of making that choice. And we also advise them that while they can get a religious exemption, if there is an introduction of an infectious disease in the school, a vaccine-preventable infectious disease, they sign off on the understanding that their child must be exempted, excluded from the school setting if they have that religious exemption. And so, and that's the process for getting those exemptions.
Thank you, Dr. Bell. Jessica?
Hi, this is Jessica Nix from Bloomberg. Thanks again for doing this today. Similar to Lena's question from earlier, since it sounds like this outbreak is not slowing down, can you speak to how the state has changed tactics to try and bring the outbreak under control? And have you called for additional help from the CDC?
The tactic for control is really the same. It is protection through vaccination or by containment when we are aware of people who are infected, to keep them from infecting others, to isolate them during their infectious period, and to quarantine people after they've been exposed. So the principles, the disease control principles, remain the same regardless of the number of cases. It obviously becomes much more difficult the more cases that we encounter, but that doesn't change the principles of the disease control. So we continue with those measures. We have not requested support from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention because we are using staff that we have, our existing staff, a staff that we have hired on for a temporary purpose to help us with the response. And the response is the same. The messaging is the same. The outreach is the same. It's just the scope of this outbreak is what we hope to see us soon on the downward side of this. But we can't predict that now with the number of people that we currently have in quarantine. When we think about the number of people previously in quarantine who incubated out and developed disease, that's what we're keeping our eyes on. And so what we see ahead of us is still a large number of people who have been exposed, a large number of people in quarantine who may incubate out, and we're not seeing that slowing at all yet.
Thank you, Dr. Bell. And that question about the CDC touched on one that we had in the chat box. Tyler, I think that was your question. If you have any follow-up, feel free to respond in the chat box. Next question from Jen.
Hi, I'm Jen Kalfas from the Wall Street Journal. I guess I just wanted to follow up a little bit more on that question about the outreach to the CDC. Why hasn't the state reached out if we're kind of seeing the acceleration at this level, and what kind of support could the CDC provide should the state reach out? I'm just curious if there's like a line that must be crossed in order to warrant something like that on your end, or kind of what's the reasoning behind not having and seeking that assistance quite yet.
So we are receiving assistance from the CDC through subject matter expertise and that kind of technical assistance remotely. I thought the question was referring to, have we requested the CDC to send a team of people on the ground in South Carolina? We have not requested that kind of support. The reason being is that we have shot givers here in South Carolina. And so the assistance that we could gain from encouraging people to get vaccinated, which is one of the primary disease control methods that we have, is if people are not turning out at high levels to get their shots, then that is not something that we necessarily need CDC assistance for. The case investigators and contact tracers, we have people who are helping us to make calls. These are people who are sort of frontline workers. We do not require the expertise of the CDC to help us staff a call bank and things like that. So the type of assistance that we need is what we're actually covering here on the ground. It doesn't mean that that the surge in cases could be controlled by additional CDC assistance, because the outreach, the direct connections with the impacted communities by people who are from the community, who know the community, is also not something that the CDC could necessarily support, as we're working to work more directly with the impacted community. That external support is not supportive of that either.
Thank you, Dr. Bell. And I'm going to get to one that's in the chat that's been there for a while. And it's Debbie from AP. She asks, Dr. Bell mentioned the spread has been prevented in schools. In what community settings are you seeing spread in that case? Is it in particular communities or in the general public?
Most of the spread that we're seeing throughout this outbreak has actually been within households. So those close household contacts and other close contacts is that kind of transmission. We have not seen ongoing spread in the schools, because that's an environment where we're able to get the vaccination histories, get the vaccination records, and exclude people from that setting and those congregate settings who could potentially spread to others. We have seen churches as important settings of transmission where, people are sitting together and they're participating in church services for prolonged contact of an hour or two at a time when they're in a church service with people. We have seen transmission associated with exposures in healthcare settings, and we have continued to encourage healthcare settings to take measures as they evaluate people who present with symptoms of respiratory illnesses to put a mask on people who present with those symptoms that could be an indication of early measles infection. Isolate them from waiting areas where other people might be exposed. Make sure that your workers, not just the healthcare workers in those settings, but administrative staff and other people who are in those settings doing intake, are vaccinated, because we are having to track a number of workers across disciplines in healthcare settings who have been exposed. And so when we track exposures in the community, with the number of public exposures, we also sort of lose track where multiple places where people could have been exposed. And so that is the main sources of transmission that we've looked at. I'll just circle back to the fact that it has been close contacts in households, in church settings, and those kinds of congregate settings.
Thanks, Dr. Bell. And Tyler, who asked in the chat about the CDC, had a follow-up. He says, while South Carolina is working tirelessly with numbers rising in spite of that, wouldn't more support always be welcomed? Wouldn't CDC ground support be able to provide additional help, even if marginal?
So I think I've addressed that question by explaining what the type of support that the CDC has to offer and the type of support that we need. If we want to increase our vaccination coverage, the CDC is not going to send people here to give shots. If we want to make strong connections to the community and understand the reason for their hesitancy, the CDC does not necessarily have a ground team that can help us with those kinds of trusted connections on the ground. And we are having to make a large number of calls, and so we are bringing in people who can provide the type of coverage that we need to make calls for symptom monitoring. That is not necessarily the kind of support that the CDC needs to send to the state for people who can answer the telephone. So we are tapping into those kinds of resources through our own means.
Thank you, Dr. Bell. And Baker? And Baker, you're muted.
Hey, I apologize. Dr. Bell, thank you again. This is Baker Maltz with the Spartan Mercurial Journal. At what point y'all reported a number of infections that were traced to a particular church, I think Way of Truth Church, and I believe it was 38 infections. Do you have a number of infections traced to any of the other churches where there have recently been exposures? Is that information we could possibly get? And I think someone put in the chat a question about whether the churches have still been cooperative, and so that would be kind of along the same lines as
All right, so we are getting an update from South Carolina Department of Public Health on the measles outbreak there. Let's take a quick break. We'll be back here in just 2 minutes here on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. Welcome back here on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. I'm Nick Sertovan. We want to get to a bit of breaking news that we're following. So according to Charlotte Fire Department, there is a fire, structure fire. This is what they're calling it. I'm sorry. I got a little click happy.
You got a little antsy?
You got a little antsy. Carlene already. Okay, here we go. Here's our shot from our WCNC Charlotte Tower cam. Again, Charlotte Fire Department calling this a structure fire. This is on Sunny Crest Lane. So firefighters on scene showing it looks to be a single-story house, so we can call this a house fire. Again, I'm reading this in real time, folks. Bear with me. But this is a look from our Charlotte WCNC Charlotte Tower camera.
You
I'm
can
trying to
kind of see some of the haze, like it was in the center of the screen.
Yeah.
Honestly, during that commercial break, it kind of blew.
It kind of blew a little bit, so they may have it under control. But as soon as we get more information, we'll pass it along. But just to give you perspective, this is in West Charlotte. This is not far from Clanton Park, Roseland area. I'm looking at a map right now. Not basically right down the road from us. So, all right. So that is a look at that. And as soon as we get more information from this house fire in West Charlotte, we'll update you. All right. So let's get to this. So today, the Mecklenburg Board of County Commissioners holding their annual budget retreat.
It's happening right now. That's what you're seeing on your screen.
It's happening right. Okay.
That's
So we're
it.
back in session. Okay. I thought there was a little bit of a break, but
They're at it.
I thought it was a little bit of a break because here you go, guys. Julie Kay is here, covering all things politics here for us. So, Julie, this is the annual budget retreat. Obviously, they're talking about the fiscal year 2026, 2027. What have they talked about so far?
Well, so you're right. There was supposed to be a break, but they've pushed back. They pushed back the
We'll
break.
make it quick.
Because they are still talking about housing. That
Okay.
has been this entire morning, really. Of course, 9 a.m. they started, introductions, icebreakers, things like that. But since then, it has been all talking about housing and homelessness. They have experts from all sects of the county there discussing it, and of course, the commissioners are getting a chance to ask questions after the presentation. I would say the big headline so far about housing and homelessness, what they were discussing when I was there in person, is federal funding might be changing how they have to address this. So HUD, the Department of Housing and Urban Development, is changing their qualifications for this federal funding. They give a lot of money to these kind of continuums of care. Multiple jurisdictions, counties across the country have these, which is basically how the federal funds get funneled into local organizations like shelters and groups like Hearts for the Invisible, ones like that we have here that actually facilitate a lot of that work and need those funds to operate. However, they're changing it so they might have to focus instead on temporary housing as opposed to permanent housing. So we received in Mecklenburg County last year about $7.6 million from HUD to the continuum of care. 90% of those funds went towards permanent housing solutions. We know there's a crisis of affordable housing in Charlotte, housing in general in Charlotte with how many people are moving here. That homelessness crisis is just getting worse as people become more displaced. However, if the HUD changes go through, which is still a question mark, they'd have to switch that to about 30% of funds going to permanent housing as opposed to 90, which is a huge change in how they would be addressing homelessness in Mecklenburg County. Those funds would instead, like I mentioned, be focused on temporary housing. It would be more as if, people kind of go through supportive care first, and then that's an option later on. County is concerned because that means people will be experiencing homelessness for longer, even if they're getting other forms of care. So this is kind of a layered issue here, and it's unclear why the federal government wants to make this move. There is some kind of back and forth in terms of federal law, whether or not they can do this. A judge has decided to block this, but that still has to go through another court. That's a whole other situation. So we're unclear if that's actually going to go through for fiscal year 2027. Reminder, this is just a budget retreat, and that isn't going to be voted on probably till June. So we have some time to figure that out, but in their early planning stages, when we're deciding how much money needs to go to what, that could mean that a lot more of the county's funds need to go towards continuing their permanent housing solutions because the federal funds might not be able to be used for that anymore.
And as a good point, Julie, as you mentioned, these retreats, again, these are continued conversations. This is a time to kind of really get into the weeds of this conversation before you actually make a budget. They walk away with an outline of a budget, and there's still several steps that need to be had for the budget to go through.
We're anticipating sometime in May we'll get kind of that preliminary budget presentation, and then it will get voted on a couple weeks later if there's some fine tuning that needs to be done. And a reminder too, the city still has a separate budget that they'll need to pass. Their retreat was actually supposed to be in Asheville on Monday and Tuesday, but of course the storm has pushed that back. We don't have an updated time yet, but I imagine sometime in the next few weeks that will have to get done because they're on a very similar budget timeline. Something we've been talking about though at all levels of government is we're kind of short on funding in general for multiple reasons. A lot of COVID era ARPA federal funds have just simply run out at this point. Something else we ran into, especially at the county level last year, is sales tax funding is just not generating as much as people anticipated. And so there may be some gaps in general that need to be filled already. So something like this on an issue like housing that's so important is not great to run into at this point.
Julie, I think you were in all the shows.
No, don't say that. Don't let them hear you say that. 4 and 6. Don't put me in the 5.
Okay. I made that up.
Take it back.
I made that up, Julie. 4 and 6. I don't know.
4 and 6.
I don't know where all the shows came from. I don't know.
Don't give them the idea.
Julie K, thank you for breaking this down. Again, some important stuff. Again, conversations as we work our way through the budget process. Thank you for stopping by, Julie.
Thank you, Nick.
See you on TV. Let's take a quick break. We'll be back here in just 2 minutes here on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. Welcome back here on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. I'm Nick Sturtevant. So we want to head to Nashville, Tennessee, as they continue to deal with the aftermath from that winter storm from over the weekend. It is brutally cold there. I want to read just a bit from the NBC affiliate there in Nashville, WSMV. So they say the Tennessee Department of Health confirmed there have been 8 weather-related deaths in the state over the past few days. The information was released Tuesday night in the Tennessee Emergency Management Agency's fifth flash report. So we want to go now to a press conference there in Nashville, giving us an update on things and conditions. Let's take a listen in.
Ensuring our water lines are running and clean, staffing warming locations at community centers, and doing countless other services that keep our city running in these difficult times. Local unions across the city, from firefighters to electrical workers to laborers, teachers, are all essential parts of our community in Nashville, and we support everyone who's working to get people what they need in these difficult times. I'd also like to read excerpts from a statement from IBEW 10th District International Vice President Brent Hall, who couldn't be here today. They represent workers in Tennessee, Arkansas, and the Carolinas. From Vice President Hall's statement, reports of IBEW line crews being turned away from helping Nashville recover from the ongoing winter storm are unequivocally false. I've been in constant touch with Mayor Freddie O'Connell and executives from Nashville Electric Service since the storm hit, working to coordinate additional manpower to restore power to NES customers. Because of the scale of outages across many states and jurisdictions, this process has taken longer than anyone would have liked. IBEW line crews have worked round-the-clock shifts since the weekend from Texas to Maine and at all points in between, and are working with utilities at every opportunity, including here in Nashville. The rumors circulating on social media are nothing more than rumors, started by people without the full picture of behind-the-scenes efforts from Mayor O'Connell or NES, who actively reached out to my office earlier in the storm and have been working closely with us since. As of this morning, additional IBEW crews are either already working with NES or en route to the area and will be working nonstop on behalf of NES customers. Please thank a line crew if you see them out restoring power this week. They are the real heroes, often working 18-hour shifts, far from home in freezing temperatures to bring the systems back online. Thank you.
I got a follow-up. You said as of this morning, IBEW crews are out. As of this morning, or has this been ongoing since the beginning of the storm, that IBEW crews?
So I have read the statement, so that's all I know. Thank you.
So we'll get back into the scale of this storm. And so we did start with our SEIU team, and on Saturday we had the 200 that were here and available. We then reached with our partners around the region, other utilities that had contract crews that could respond and continue to grow. The mention in the statement of us working together with both SEIW and IBEW was SEIU and IBEW was what we were doing early on to figure out how, when we continue to scale, how quick can we get them, where are they at right now. The important thing as we bring on crews is that ensure that we can have the logistics to get them here, the safety when they are working here, which is extremely important. We want to make sure we remind everybody of the safety. So as we have done that, we've worked to see when can we bring those next ones on. IBEW crews yesterday started to move this way, and today was the day that they had shown up.
And I want to emphasize the constant support and dedication and just overall commitment of our partners in organized labor. Our SEIU local, you just heard it from Jessica, they have been working in multiple 24/7 teams. They have been joined by IBEW, even though IBEW does not represent our NES folks. And so it is great to see them collaborating, great to see them responding together, and very proud to stand alongside our friends and partners in organized labor.
I do just have one more question. There's 900 linemen right now, right, which is great. So a lot of people are at home, they're just wondering, they're taking shelter. With that amount of linemen out, when can we expect to possibly see the power restored? How does that make the sale next?
Yeah, I think he just answered that question. Let's keep going. Araceli?
Switching gears a little bit, wondering on the transportation line, on average, how long are people waiting to get to a warming center?
On the call line.
What should they do when they call and perhaps they're greeted with like an English message?
Yes, thank you. Since we started the operations of putting together a system in a way that we could have individuals call a certain number and then the response from the fire department, the police department, and others to respond to them, it's been very effective. The first night that we had it, we started the process. We started a little later than what we would propose to, but we made well over 120 some transports, but we had 70 in the cube waiting. But for me to give you exactly the time frame, what I can tell you, the difference between the first night and last night is an incredible difference. Number one, we started it earlier. Matter of fact, today we're going to actually put the call out if you need a shelter. We're going to start that at 2 o'clock instead of waiting a little later in the afternoon, and it'll help our teams get people to the shelter quicker. But if you ask me how long, I would always say that, again, I think what we're doing is efficient and fluent. Could we be better? Of course. And we're working on that. I think when we talk about scaling, one of the things you heard NES talk about, and I know that word scaling, what does that mean? It means building the plan to meet the need, and sometimes that takes time to do it because you got to make sure you have the proper resources in place. Even at the shelters, we have proper people that can run the shelters, proper staffing, proper resources in order to be able to meet the demand. So at this point, we feel very comfortable and confident. If you need a ride, you call. We'll get to you quick and fast and efficient. And as far as our non-English speaking citizens and visitors and residents, we're working closely with the Office of Emergency Management. I will give you that information. I'm sorry, I cannot think of it right now, but we're working real closely to make sure that we have the ability for interpreters or for them to actually call out. And we're using other resources to have other warming shelters that are put into different communities. And I apologize, I don't have that, but I will make sure that it gets put out to you and to others. So, but thank you for that question. Again, my response to everyone is, again, if you need a ride, please call, and we'll make sure that we get to you and get you to a proper place. And again, if you got a plan B, and you realize that you can go somewhere else, go ahead and pull that card, use it now, and then we've got something in a place for you if you need help.
And before you leave, let's follow up on that. I've got a couple other things I wanted to share you. I'm going to go with 3 more, and I know I won't be able to get to everybody. We'll do Austin and Emily and Amanda. And then I've got so many colleagues here that are happy to help and stay longer. I'm sorry that we won't be able to get to all of them. Yeah, Austin.
Thanks, Alex. We had some discussion both today and yesterday about water system issues maybe being one of those next challenges that we're shifting focus towards. That maybe is one thing that I want to hear a little bit more about, but kind of stemming off of that, are there other challenges or issues or areas of concern as we get closer to the weekend that we're thinking the focus may shift towards more folks power restored, roads cleared more fully from debris, from fallen trees and everything, stuff like that, just forward facing?
Yeah, the water system is operating well presently, but we've got 9 main breaks, and we're going to find more. So we've scaled up as well. We've got contractors ready to go, and as the main breaks come in, we'll repair them. The key thing for us is maintaining flow and pressure in the system, and we're doing that. So I'm not concerned at this point. We've faced similar types of emergencies in Metro Water, and I think we've managed our way through them okay. If we get concerned about anything to do with the water quality in our drinking water, I will let you know. And at this point, I'm completely comfortable and confident in saying that we're good.
Also, just to address that question, you've heard NDOT talk about debris removal, and you've heard me talk about the fact that we may have trees in homes or we have damage to your properties, and we always talk about declarations and making sure that you can get reimbursed or have funding for our small businesses. Again, we just ask everyone to make sure that you're documenting, taking pictures, and if you have debris removal, make sure you move it to a safe location in front of your properties, making sure it's not dealing with any type of drains, or putting it into drains to create other issues or problems. So again, documentation, taking pictures is very important because that will be a phase of this that's going to be very important for homeowners and also business owners as we move into that next phase. Mayor.
Thank you, Director Potter and Director Chief Swan. Austin, a couple other thoughts there. We're still in the response period, and that will eventually transition to the recovery period. And as we're still in that response period, the weather is continuing to be unkind to the circumstances we're confronting. So we know this is a multi-day power outage event, and I'd say this overall crisis for Nashville is broken down into two primary categories. One is the infrastructure crisis, which is affecting roadways and other rights of way and ability for people to move safely around the city, as well as the utility crisis with power outages and knowing what we know about the likelihood of water issues coming. Then there's the humanitarian crisis part of it, and that is the urgency is for bitter cold temperatures, people's ability to stay warmth and not have exposure risk, and then beyond that it's everything else, food access. It is, coming up this week has been tough for people getting to work. If businesses are closed, you can't earn wages. We know it's end of the month. We will have Metro Action Commission guidance, but we know Metro departments in some cases have been closed. So people getting back online, that sort of surge of activity, you've already heard where high call volume has impacted things. We know that's going to continue well through the weekend as more Metro departments are coming online, particularly from a human services standpoint. We're trying to make sure that hot meals, snacks are available at multiple locations. Right now, we're going to continue to see that. And then as we get into the recovery side of things, we know small business assistance, other forms of things where volunteer and philanthropic support make a huge difference are going to matter too. And so we will be enlisting those resources. But right now, our top priority is the safety of Nashvillians in bitter cold and the infrastructure crisis response that is supporting every bit of being able to restore power as quickly as possible.
Camille, can you share the map real quick? Austin, if we can be helpful and share the other one, of the warming shelters so folks know around the county that regardless of where they are, there's a resource near them. We'd be happy to share that. And I think I said Emily was next.
Why is it that on Wednesday, when power started to go out Saturday night, early Sunday, you still cannot give anything more specific than a multi-day event, which is what you were saying, Mayor, as well, before the power went out? And then just again on the workers, were there conversations with contractors outside of NES where NES said, we don't need contract work, and if IBEW workers were showing up yesterday, why did it take that long when most of these power outages occurred on Sunday? There's a lack of details. Can you break down when those conversations happened and how many people are mobilized as well?
Yeah, I think also important, customers, as we've led up to this event, we were communicating a lot to our customers, getting the information so that they could be prepared and letting them know what we were preparing for. As the storm was developing, all of the contract resources around the region were the ones that we were all working toward as utilities. You can know from Texas to the East Coast, we were all working to gather those. We had reserved those that we could get a hold of, and every utility wanted to hang on to those resources. As on the day of the event, we had on Saturday night, we had 200. The next day, we had Memphis allowing their 80 to come over. We were gathering steam within just 24 hours. We were moving up and up the ladder on that, up to the 900 we have now. We have contract resources all around that we've been talking to from the very beginning. The first round is always to work with our partners at other utilities who we have the same relationships with other workers to bring them quickly because they can land on our system and safely respond. They have already worked on our system in the past or have a leadership that has. We can move quickly. That speed to respond is a very important thing for us. Bringing on outside contractors that have never worked on our system requires some vetting to ensure that there is safety. That was beginning early on. Those conversations on day one were happening with all types of contractors. The background didn't matter. As they were coming through, we have to go through the process of understanding just what their capabilities are. Will they be able to work on the system safely, and how far away are they? When we make through that, each day we're going through a list of those that are available and when can we onboard them. Our existing resources got us to 900. Our existing friendships, contracts got us to 900. To continue to scale is where we're going to that next level of relationships that we've been building and continuing to have all the way up to that point.
And the multi-days,
I'll go to the map that we had up. The progress we're making is in green. As we get to the red, in any event that we have, the further you get to making progress, you start to get to the more challenging areas. We have to continue to make safe decisions to get more people in here, to get to know exactly where we are. We have to then continue to unfold what does it take to get that done. Day one, we had around 50 poles that were down. As we went into the night, we found roughly 70 poles. We're now up to 300 poles. To get that total accumulation of what it is just what we're working toward. Our people in the field are the ones that are getting us that information.
So just to make sure I understand, you're saying that the shortage of workers at the front end was because you were sharing with the region, not because NES said no to anybody.
All of us across the region had resources that we regularly work with and ready to respond to the storm. As we built out that was by gathering all of those resources around.
All right, last but not least, Amanda, yeah.
Hello. With regards to the National Guard, can you explain timeline, the scope of their work, and location within the city which we can expect those National Guardsmen within?
Yeah, Chief Swan.
Yeah, thank you for that. And this has been worked out as, of course, last night you heard the announcement. I know we've been working closely, the Office of Emergency Management, we work closely with our team of partners, and we know that the request of assistance from TDOT to TEMA, that they need assistance and help to help clear roadways and to help remove debris. So it moved into a stage that TDOT will also assist, have been great partners for NDOT and also for our NES partners. And when we talk about restoring power, this is a great tool. Their job and their objective will be to come on the scene and to help. They're basically personnel power. They're there for muscle. They'll be removing debris, help move trees, get them off power lines, so that, again, the question about NES and the power lines, this will help out our resources that we have locally in Davidson County. They're doing this throughout Tennessee, and now they'll be able to come into Davidson County as well to assist us. Their job will be to remove trees and to help our NES partners, our NDOT partners,
All right, so that is an update there from the city of Nashville in Tennessee. That is one of the members from the Nashville Fire Department giving an update again. They got slammed over the weekend by this winter storm. They're still grappling with that, the aftermath. Let's take a quick break. We'll be back here in just 2 minutes here on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. Welcome back here on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. I'm Nick Sturtevant. All right, so we are preparing for a chance of snow here in Charlotte yet again, as far as winter weather yet again. Chance for snow. There is a good chance we could get snow. How much? That's the question. Let's check in with Chief Meteorologist Brad Panovich for our snow outlook.
Hey everybody, Chief Meteorologist Brad Panovich here with an update on our winter storm this weekend, and this time it's going to be snow or nothing at all. This is a rare all-snow setup for us, and I'll get into it, but we got to start first with what's happening right now because there's a lot of cold air across the country. The satellite map this morning is pretty impressive when you look at this, and you may not even notice this, but a lot of this white you see is snow or ice on the ground. Those aren't clouds. That is a deep snowpack. If you loop this a couple of times, you'll see that there's just not much cloud cover there. That's actually all snow in that area. So I'll loop it a couple times. You can see how you see where the clouds are based on the movement, and what's not moving, that's the snow on the ground. So kind of a really cool setup to see on the satellite image, but also tells you this air is really cold. It's moving over refrigerated ground, which is going to keep everything cold. So what's going to happen in the next really 24 to 36 hours, we're going to see a big piece of the polar vortex that's in eastern Canada try to kick off some pretty cold air and send what we call a vorticity maximum down. This vorticity maximum is going to be diving south. Now, unlike other winter storms which form to our west and move towards us, this is going to kind of form over us. So that's kind of the monkey wrench in this, and if something's going to go wrong, that could really screw this up. So let me show you what this looks like. So what you're looking at here is something we call vorticity. It's up around 15,000 feet in the atmosphere, give or take several thousand on the time of year. But what I'm looking at is this strong vorticity maximum. You're going to see it coming up here and coming to the south. And watch what it does as it dives into the southeast here. So this is Friday morning. We go into Friday night. Look at that thing come down. I mean, that is potent. And the one change over the last couple of days, this has actually started to trend back this way instead of right here, which would have formed the low here way offshore. Now, with it coming down like this, the low is likely going to form closer to the coast. And at the very minimum, this vorticity is so potent, it moving over us would kick off snow showers. The other thing that happens, watch this. You've heard me talk about this before, positive, neutral, and negative tilt. So positive tilt is a trough. Remember, it's a dip in the jet stream like this. If it's tilted like this to the right, we call that a positive tilt, right? If it's kind of straight up and down, like it's going straight like this, we would call this a neutral tilt. When it becomes negatively tilted, which means it starts tilting back this direction, that's when storms get strong, especially on the East Coast, because it's able to pull moisture in from the coast and throw it back into the cold air. So watch what happens as this goes by us. It goes neutral and then starts taking on a little bit of that negative tilt there. And depending on where this happens, this little negative tilt, which is roughly something like this, starts throwing moisture back here. There will be a band of heavy snow somewhere in here that could form once the low pressure gets mature and then pushes out. And that blue line, that is all well below freezing. That means all snow, no mix, nothing to worry about at all as far as the amounts, or I should say the types of precipitation. It's really just more about the amounts as that moves through. So from a timing standpoint, this is really late Friday night into Saturday, last all day Saturday, even into Sunday morning, and then starts to move out Sunday night into Monday. So let me show you a couple products here that will help explain what's going to happen. So without even getting into totals yet, we can look at the chance of moderate impacts, which essentially means bad travel. That probability has increased quite a bit in the last 24, 36 hours. The area in red is really about 60% plus. The darker reds are in the 80 to 90% range, and you see a couple pockets of that. But now that kind of slides it closer to Charlotte overall, meaning we've got a pretty significant impact of snow. And it doesn't, in this case, the amounts almost don't matter because the air is so cold, the ground is so cold. This is going to cause slick conditions. We'll get more into the totals because things that could fluff up and change the total. There's a lot of dynamics going on here. But one of my favorite products, and I think you guys have seen this before, I've shown it. I'm a big fan of this product because it kind of shows you the probability of seeing, a 1 inch of snow. So if we look at the 1 inch snow probabilities from the ensembles, not one piece of data, but like 51 variations, you'll see the 1 inch probabilities here over the Carolinas through Monday morning. I'll stop this Monday morning around 12Z, we call it 7 a.m. You could see everything in the maroon is 90% or higher. So there's a 90% chance based on all of the guidance of at least 1 inch. Now you can look at the 3 inch probabilities, and this will give you a good idea as well. how could we go 3 inches, right? What's the probability of us getting 3 inches of snow, which is winter storm warning criteria, by the way. Winter storm criteria warning is 3 inches. We'll go through Monday morning, same time frame. You could see this area kind of in, I would say, lighter orange. The darker orange is around 70%, but the darker orange, that's like 80%. And there's some pockets of 90% in the red. So this shows you a 70+% chance of 3 inches, at least across the Charlotte area. And notice it's all mainly east, right? Primarily looking off to the east is where we're seeing that, because even when you saw this graphic, it's the west, the mountains could get less. This is the kind of setup, because this is a coastal storm that developed. So let me show you what this could look like. So this is just a quick look at the general idea. It's not going to be just like this, but I want to give you a general idea of what this could look like based on just the European model. But the GFS and all, they're all kind of in general agreement. You could see late Friday night, we see that short wave coming down, and this is based on surface. Really cold air here, by the way. When you're seeing this up here, this is Arctic air. I mean, these are temperatures, teens and single digits coming down. So you see that little band of snow that forms with this is the vorticity maximum I talked about coming down, it producing snow. But then watch the low pressure develop on the coast. And this is the big question. How much moisture can that low pressure throw back west? Because this is going to drive, if there's going to be heavier snow, it's going to be driven by this. I think at the very minimum, we're getting light snow. The question is how heavy it gets. You could see some bands of heavy snow trying to form, but this is where the question is, where does this low form? I mean, it generally could form anywhere in here. And the difference between being here, 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 here is pretty significant in the amounts. But overall, this wouldn't change the fact that at least there would be some snow. That's why you're seeing the 1% or the 1 inch percentages really high, because there's at least going to be some snow. It's the question of how high does that total go? The high ends could be super high, but we're going to go more of the mean for what we're thinking is going to happen. And that should give you a rough idea. Now, in full transparency, I will show you what the blend of some of the modeling is showing. And again, this is a product, not one model, but all the models blended together. Now, it can be weighed by one big model, right? And we call that an outlier. It could definitely skew it, but this gives you an idea of the amounts that it's trying to produce across the Carolinas. And you can see generally as low as 3 inches west to 7 or 8 inches east. Now, that's probably not right, but it gives you a general trend, like, well, that's a lot for that guidance. We can show you the other model blender, which is a newer version of it. It's a little bit less, but it still shows generally 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 inches across the big area of the Carolinas. So you're starting to see significant, indications or signals of this is going to be some snow. One of the things I look at, and I've showed you this before, are the soundings. So this is a forecast sounding. Why are we so confident this is going to be all snow? One caveat there. At the very beginning, if it starts early Friday, could start as a little bit of rain, but we can go through time and see it changes to snow. And unlike with our last storm, there's no warm nose here. This line right here is the 0 degree line. So the weather balloon sounding would go up into the atmosphere. As long as it stays left of this line, it's all below 0 and Celsius, which is below freezing. You can see this is going to be all snow. When we get freezing rain, the temperature goes past here and comes back, and we call that a warm nose. It's a warm layer aloft around 5,000 feet. There's none of that. In fact, it just gets colder and colder and colder and drives really cold conditions. And behind my head here, you can see temperatures all below 0 Celsius, which means it's all below freezing, all the way down to the ground. Now, the one thing that's kind of fascinating about this storm is it could have snowfall ratios of 15, 16 to 1, and that could fluff up the snow. Typically 8 to 1 is our ratios here. This could be much higher. So that means the snow is going to be very efficient. We could take a little bit of water and create a lot more snow than we normally could. So what does all this mean? Well, it means we're going to have some snow this weekend, at least on Saturday. The amounts still yet to be determined, but I will tell you, I'm confident we're going to see at least an inch in most areas. How high above that we go? Still a question. Super cold. Temperatures may not get above freezing. Once it changes to snow, it stays below freezing through Monday morning. So Arctic chill with us. And it could be windy depending on how close the low is to us. So we could see blowing, drifting snow, because this will be the fluffy kind, which blows around. So the snow meter remains at a 4 because it's still a very good chance of snow. We're not to the bread and milk. Charlotte closes kind of tongue in cheek, but Charlotte will shut down if we get more than an inch, and we might even get an inch. It happens. And we're not to buy sled or shovel yet. We're not that type of level yet. In this storm, honestly, you probably wouldn't need a shovel at all. you need a southern snow blower, which would be a leaf blower because it'll be so light you could blow it off everything. That's the kind of storm we're talking about. So I will post updates. Again, timing as soon as late Friday, but really after dark Friday into Saturday morning it starts. It lasts all day Saturday, lingers into Sunday. Will probably stop snowing some point Sunday, but it's still going to be so cold. Roads will be icy through Monday morning with temperatures, if there's snow on the ground, single digits on Monday morning. Could be even colder if there's deep snow in some parts of our area. So stay tuned. This is a snowstorm, not an ice storm.
All right, so you heard it there from Chief Meteorologist Brad Panovich on our outlook for snow this weekend. All right, so let's take a quick break. We'll be back here in just 2 minutes here on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. Welcome back here on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. I'm Nick Sturtevant. So we got an update from NBC News that 2 federal officers who fired their guns during Alex Preddy's fatal shooting in Minnesota, according to an initial review by the Department of Homeland Security obtained by NBC News. Now, both agents were placed on administrative leave, according to DHS. As that news came out, happening right now live in Washington, D.C., the Senate Homeland Security Investigations hearing is underway. Let's take a listen in.
Clear, the effect is on red and blue states alike. Secretary Noem's insistence on personally approving every contract funds, this repayment for expenses FEMA has already approved are stuck in Secretary Noem's endless queue. Survivors of Hurricane Helene in North Carolina have received only $1 billion of the estimated $60 billion in damages the state experienced from the storm. And FEMA has been withholding millions of dollars in mitigation funding from Florida, Louisiana, and Texas. Now, FEMA's lost thousands of employees in the first half of 2025. Its resources have been decimated, and I believe that we should devote the same kind of scrutiny we are devoting to this fire and the recovery from it to FEMA and the crippling effects of cuts and cancellations of contracts and the review process that has been established by Secretary Noem. Finally, I just want to say I'm grateful to Spencer Hawkins for appearing here today to address how policy changes at FEMA over the past year have made the work of local emergency response offices, like the one he leads, even harder and more perilous. Thank you, Chairman Johnson.
Thank you, Senator Blumenthal. It is a tradition of this subcommittee to swear in witnesses, so if you'll all rise and raise your right hand. Do you swear the testimony you will give before the subcommittee will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Please be seated. Our first witness is Fire Chief Patrick Butler. Chief Butler is the Fire Chief and Harbor Master for the City of Redondo Beach, California. He has over 36 years of experience in the fire service, including 32 years with the Los Angeles Fire Department, where he retired as an Assistant Fire Chief. He holds a doctorate from the University of Southern California and a master's degree from the U.S. Naval Postgraduate School. Chief Butler.
Chair, Ranking Member, and members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to appear for you today. My name is Patrick Butler. I spent 36 years in the fire service, including 32 years with the Los Angeles Fire Department, where I rose to the rank of Assistant Chief. I currently serve as the Fire Chief and Harbor Master for the City of Redondo Beach. I have lived in Los Angeles for more than 50 years and raised my family here. This is my home, and I have a direct stake in the safety of the region. I appear today in my personal and professional capacity to draw on my experience managing large-scale wildfires to address Los Angeles' failure to properly plan for and execute effective suppression and incident management during the Palisades fire, and to explain how this disaster departed from long-established wildfire doctrine. My central finding is unequivocal. The Palisades fire was preventable. Over my career, I've commanded and operated during some of the largest and most complex wildfires in Los Angeles and Southern California. I have served in command, operations, aviation, and interagency coordination roles during extreme wind-driven wildland-urban interface fires. This assessment is grounded in executive-level command experience across more than 50 wildfire incidents, including numerous large-scale pre-deployments supported by operational records and after-action reports. In the early hours of January 8, 2025, I responded under mutual aid to the Palisades fire. What I observed was not simply a difficult fire under extreme conditions. It was a predictable outcome of a breakdown in leadership, preparedness, and command discipline. Firefighters were forced to improvise without adequate resources, unified command, or consistent safety oversight. This was not a failure of effort by firefighters. It was a failure of leadership above them. The fire that began on January 1st, known as the Lockman Fire, was never fully extinguished. It became a holdover fire, a well-known and predictable hazard in the chaparral environments such as the Pacific Palisades. In my experience, when holdover fires are not aggressively extinguished and are not continuously monitored, they rekindle. That is not rare. That is expected. When the forecasted life-threatening winds arrived on January 7th, the unmonitored Lockman Fire predictably reignited and spread rapidly. What followed was not unforeseeable. It was the expected result of leaving a holdover fire unmanaged in a densely populated, high-risk community with limited evacuation routes. Los Angeles possesses decades of wildfire experience, established pre-deployment doctrine, and area-specific operational plans for every major wildland-urban interface corridor, including the Pacific Palisades. These plans were written, trained, exercised, and repeatedly proven effective. I was directly involved in their development and personally executed them during prior wind-driven fires in these same communities. For more than a week before this fire, the National Weather Service issued repeated warnings of a life-threatening wind event. Fire Weather Intelligence clearly identified the Pacific Palisades and the still smoldering Lockman fire within the projected impact area. This failure was not a lack of warning, it was a failure to act. In incidents I previously commanded, forecasts of this severity triggered immediate escalation, large-scale deployment, extended staffing, and full activation of emergency management systems. Forecasts were treated as operational decision points, not background information. That did not occur here. Once a fire becomes of the forecasted life-threatening conditions. Responsibility for continuity of leadership and citywide coordination rests with the mayor, and in this case, that responsibility was not met. After the fire, internal after-action findings were altered despite documented objections from the independent review team. I'll follow up in closing here. Based on my experience, the fire was not an inevitable disaster. It was a preventable event shaped by decisions made before the wind arrived. When leaders act early on known
He is a graduate of multiple advanced leadership and crisis management programs, including executive education at the University of Southern California, Cornell University, and Harvard University. Chief Crawford.
Good afternoon, Chairman, Ranking Member, and distinguished members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to testify today. My name is Rick Crawford. I'm a retired battalion chief from the Los Angeles Fire Department, where I served more than 3 decades in frontline and executive incident command roles. During my career, I served as an incident commander, deputy operations section chief on the LAFD incident management team, and public information on complex, high-profile Type 1 incidents. I commanded one of the busiest 911 communication centers in the world, where I directly handled pre-deployment and pre-positioning of of the Los Angeles Fire Department's 23 automatic and mutual aid agreements.
All right, so we are going to take a step aside and we are going to head to break. We'll be back here in just 2 minutes here on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. Welcome back here on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. I'm Nick Sturtevant. We want to take you now to Washington, D.C., where Fed Chair Jerome Powell holding a press conference there following the Fed's latest interest rate announcement. Let's take a listen in.
The housing sector has remained weak. The temporary shutdown of the federal government likely weighed on economic activity last quarter, but these effects should be reversed as the reopening boosts growth this quarter. In the labor market, indicators suggest that conditions may be stabilizing after a period of gradual softening. The unemployment rate was 4.4% in December and has changed little in recent months. Job gains have remained low. Total non-farm payrolls declined at an average pace of 22,000 per month over the last 3 months. Excluding government employment, private payrolls rose at an average pace of 29,000 per month. A good part of the slowing in the pace of job growth over the past year reflects a decline in the growth of the labor force due to lower immigration and labor force participation, though labor demand has clearly softened as well. Other indicators, including openings, layoffs, hiring, and nominal wage growth, show little change in recent months. Inflation has eased significantly from its highs in mid-2022, but remains somewhat elevated relative to our 2% longer-run goal. Estimates based on the Consumer Price Index indicate that total PCE prices rose 2.9% over the 12 months ending in December, and that excluding the volatile food and energy categories, core PCE prices rose 3.0%. These elevated readings largely reflect inflation in the goods sector, which has been boosted by the effects of tariffs. In contrast, disinflation appears to be continuing in the services sector. Near-term measures of inflation expectations have declined from last year's peaks, as reflected in both market and survey-based measures. Most measures of longer-term expectations remain consistent with our 2% inflation goal. Our monetary policy actions are guided by our dual mandate to promote maximum employment and stable prices for the American people. At today's meeting, the committee decided to maintain the target range for the federal funds rate at 3.5% to 3.75%. Since last September, we have lowered our policy rate 75 basis points, or 0.75 of a percentage point, bringing it within a range of plausible estimates of neutral. This normalization of our policy stance should help stabilize the labor market while allowing inflation to resume its downward trend toward 2%, once the effects of tariff increases have passed through. We are well positioned to determine the extent and timing of additional adjustments to our policy rate based on the incoming data, the evolving outlook, and the balance of risks. Monetary policy is not on a preset course, and we will make our decisions on a meeting-by-meeting basis. To conclude, the Fed has been assigned 2 goals for monetary policy: maximum employment and stable prices. We remain committed to supporting maximum employment, bringing inflation sustainably to our 2% goal, and keeping longer-term inflation expectations well anchored. Our success in delivering on these goals matters to all Americans. We at the Fed will continue to do our jobs with objectivity, integrity, and a deep commitment to serve the American people. Thank you. I look forward to your questions.
Chris Rugaber at Associated Press. Thank you. I wanted to ask that you attended the Supreme Court hearing last week on the Lisa Cook case, and Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent criticized that as political. Can you say why you attended and what you would say in response to the Secretary's criticism?
So let me start with I don't respond to comments by other officials, whoever they may be. It's just not appropriate to do that. I will tell you why I attended. I would say that that case is perhaps the most important legal case in the Fed's 113-year history. And as I thought about it, I thought it might be hard to explain why I didn't attend. In addition, Paul Volcker went to a Supreme Court case famously in, I guess, 1985 or so. So it's precedented, and I thought it was an appropriate thing, and I did it.
Great. And then just quickly follow on the job market. You mentioned last month that the household survey might be distorted, and you also mentioned the potential for overcounting jobs. which would suggest that we're still in a negative hiring pace. So do you see the drop in the unemployment rate as solid? And what's the basis for saying that things have stabilized? Thank you.
So, yeah, really two questions. One is, so we're getting through the distortions in the data from the shutdown. However big they were in November, they're smaller in December. So we're getting to a place where they're no longer material. They're still there, but it's a tweak here and there. The reason why we changed the statement, let me pull it out, was simply, it used to say that judges that downside risks to employment rose in recent months. So we saw, data coming in which suggests some signs of stabilization. I wouldn't go too far with that, but some signs of stabilization. There are also some signs of continued cooling. And so we thought that was no longer an accurate description of the data. In addition, the outlook for economic activity has clearly improved since the last meeting, and that should matter for labor demand and for employment over time. So for those two reasons, we thought we would take that language out of the statement.
Nick Timrose, The Wall Street Journal. Chair Powell, you've generally avoided engaging with political controversies directly, and the video statement on January 11th was a departure. What made this different, and are you concerned it could draw the institution further into political debates?
So today I'm simply going to refer you to the statement that I made on January 11. I'm not going to expand on it or repeat it. So I'm just not going to. This is really about the press conference and the economy and what we did today, and some ancillary areas, but I'm not going to be getting into that.
Can you say whether the Fed has responded to the subpoenas?
I have nothing for you on that today.
Mike.
Michael McKee from Bloomberg Radio TV. Have you made a decision on whether you would remain as a governor of the Federal Reserve? And if so, would you tell us what it is? And if not, when might we anticipate a decision?
No, and I really, once again, have nothing for you on that today. That either.
Why would you want to leave it all under the circumstances?
Again, I don't want to get into this. It's not something I'm. There's a time and place for these questions, but not something I'm going to be getting into today. Thank you.
Thank you. Claire Jones, Financial Times. Thanks a lot for taking my questions. In another one that might, lead to a similar answer. We've seen quite big movements in the dollar over recent days. What do you think is driving the U.S. currency lower? And have you been at all concerned just by the extent of the volatility we've seen this week? Thank you.
So, Claire, as you probably know, we don't comment on the dollar. Really, the administration, especially the Treasury Department, has the job of oversight over the currency and exchange rates and all that. We don't comment on that. It's not our role. So I have nothing for you.
But, what's your view on the market movements? What do you think behind them? Is it asset managers diversifying? Is it?
Yeah, I just don't. We don't talk about the dollar. We don't talk about what moves it around. It's just not appropriate for us to do so. Really, the Treasury Department has that. It's their role, their bailiwick, and we stay off it. We do monetary policy and some other things, but we don't comment on the dollar. Sorry.
Neil.
Hi, Chair Powell. Neil Irwin with Axios. Obviously, no SEP in this meeting, but in light of the slight firming up of the language around growth in the labor market in the statement, should we assume that the timeline for any further rate cuts is pushed back compared to what people might have thought in December?
Well, first of all, if you look at the incoming data since the last meeting, clear improvement in the outlook for growth. The data have come in, and sentiment, the Beige Book, everything comes in suggesting that this year starts off on a solid footing for growth. Inflation performed about as expected, and as I mentioned, some of the labor market data came in suggesting we're evidence of stabilization. So it's overall a stronger forecast, really, if that's your question. I'm not sure I answered your question.
But in terms of timing or pacing of any additional easing?
So we haven't made what we'd say about this was that after this meeting, after the 3 recent rate cuts, we're well positioned to address the risks that we face on both sides of our dual mandate, and we'll continue to make our decisions meeting by meeting based on the incoming data, the implications for and the outlook and the balance of risks. Haven't made any decisions about future meetings, but the economy is growing at a solid pace. The unemployment rate has been broadly stable, and inflation remains somewhat elevated. So we'll be looking to our goal variables and letting the data light the way for us.
Steve.
Steve Leisman, CNBC, and sticking with questions you might answer, thank you. You had previously, I believe, described the current policy rate being at the higher end of neutral. And if you look at the longer run, the SEP and the longer run rates, 16 of 19 officials are actually below there on their long run. Is the Fed still in a process of bringing it down towards a middle range of neutral? And what would it take to get there?
So the count I did was that 4 of the 19 were at or above that. Maybe I missed by 1, but I thought it was 4. And if you look at the dealer survey, it was 10 out of 58 where we're at or above. So you're right. It's the higher end of the range. What we say is it's within the range of plausible estimates. This is the higher end of that range, but so for some people they think it's neutral. I think, and many of my colleagues think, it's hard to look at the incoming data and say that policy is significantly restrictive at this time. It may be sort of loosely neutral, or it may be somewhat restrictive. It's in the eye of the beholder, and of course no one knows with any precision. If you had a follow-up.
I get what you're saying, but some officials have described the Fed being in a mode of bringing it down eventually over time. Are you still in that mode, or is this a place to hang out?
Yeah, no, I would say if you look at the SEP from December, most people had additional normalization. But at the same time, we've done a lot of the process of normalizing. A good piece of it is done with 75 basis points, and before that, 100. It's 175 basis points we've cut since we began cutting in September of 2024. So you've moved now to, Fed funds is running just a little below 3.65%. So you've moved a good way, and we think we're well positioned here to watch how the economy performs, look at the data. We're not making decisions about future meetings, but we do think we're well positioned after those 3 cuts to let the data speak to us.
Amira. Thank you, Chair Powell. Amira Mokwe from Bloomberg News. To what extent did the committee discuss the possibility of cutting at this meeting or in March? And how are you all thinking about the conditions that would merit another rate cut? Is there broad agreement on the committee about what it would take?
So there was broad support on the committee for holding today. Broad, I would say, including among non-voters. So that's where that was. Of course, some people did want to cut and dissented, but committee pretty broadly for holding today. We're not trying to articulate a test for when to next cut or whether to cut at the next meeting. What we're saying is we're well positioned as we make decisions meeting by meeting, looking at the incoming data, evolving outlook, and all that. And we're in a position where we still have some tension between employment and inflation, but it's less than it was. I think that the upside risks to inflation and the downside risks to employment have probably both diminished a bit. So we'll be looking at that. It's about how you weigh the risks to the 2 goals and how big those, and quantify them. And so there are different views on the committee, and we'll find our way forward as the data evolve.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Edward Lawrence from Fox Business. Has the effects of tariffs already moved through the economy on prices?
A lot of it has. So basically, there are many different estimates, and they're all highly uncertain. But most of the overrun in goods prices is from tariffs. And that's actually good news, because if it weren't from tariffs, it might mean it's from demand, and that's a harder problem to solve.
You're watching Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. I'm Nick Sturdivant. All right, so that is Fed Chair Jerome Powell giving an update on the latest interest rate announcement. A lot of eyes on this announcement. Again, that's Fed Chair Jerome Powell there in Washington, D.C. for that press conference. All right, let's shift gears now. We had that press conference on earlier. That press conference I'm referring to is the Department of Health, Public Health in South Carolina. That virtual press conference updating us on that measles outbreak. So South Carolina measles outbreak, it reaches 789 cases, surpassing Texas. You remember at one point Texas was leading in cases. Now that's South Carolina. WCNC Charlotte's Autumn Bracey is here in studio with us. Autumn, thank you for joining us. Some staggering numbers here. Again, we've been getting these frequent updates from the Department of Public Health. What were you able to learn from that press conference from earlier?
Yeah, you just mentioned it. It's very concerning. You just touched on Texas once being the highest number of transmission rates, and now that's South Carolina. So Dr. Linda Bell, she is in charge of the Department of Public Health in South Carolina. She was kind of just sharing, what people need to know. You just mentioned that number, 789 people confirmed, and as of Friday, she shared that 89 new cases of measles confirmed. And, this isn't just isolated to South Carolina. North Carolina is also seeing some cases not nearly as high. That's one thing she wanted to highlight, is this is not a multi-state crisis as of now. Just to highlight real quick, obviously we are Charlotte. In North Carolina, about 14 cases of measles has been confirmed as of December of last year, particularly in Mecklenburg County, 3 of them. And so her message continues to be vaccinated. A lot of people, are curious, like with these numbers continuing to climb, what can be done? Do we need more federal help, aka the CDC? She says we don't need the CDC to come in and give people vaccination shots. I mean, that's something that the state can do on its own. So she's just continuing to get that message out there. One other thing to know is a measles dashboard, similar to COVID-19. We know there was a dashboard where people could monitor the numbers. That has been launched within South Carolina on Friday. So that's where people can go to kind of stay up to date as far as like transmission, where it's happening. I know several of the schools there, that's a big place of transmission. So that's something to keep in mind. And she also wants people to know that contract tracing, that also kind of goes back to COVID-19. People actively searching, trying to trace, where people are getting exposed to measles is going on as well. So this evening at 5 o'clock, we'll break down more on what people need to know to hopefully, of course, bring these numbers down.
And that's a look at the dashboard that Autumn just mentioned right there on your screen. Again, you can take a look at the dashboard for South Carolina.
It looks very similar to the one they did for COVID.
Yeah, I was
very
just
similar.
thinking about that.
No, I was having flashbacks. As they were talking, I was like, oh my goodness.
It's very similar to the other one.
Very similar, but you can see right there, I'll pull it up again, the dashboard. Autumn, thank you again. You'll be on at 5 o'clock, you said? 5 o'clock, some important information, because I'm sure, Carlene, Autumn, you've gotten a bunch of questions about measles. It's still a lot to sort of...
I have friends in the upstate, and one of them's a teacher, and they get asked all the time about how quickly is it spreading. So she's a teacher in Greenville, which is not too far from Spartanburg. So
right,
it's
that's
a concern.
That's where most of the cases are as of now.
And then it's one of those things like the beginning of COVID, not comparing it to COVID.
No.
But it's kind of like, how do you answer that question? Right. So we're going to get you some answers. Autumn will get you some answers at 5. Autumn, thank you for stopping by.
Thank you.
Let's take a quick break. And before we go to break, I just want to highlight that we are seeing the possibility of snow this weekend. You can count on WCNC Charlotte as this stuff rolls in to keep you covered, to keep you safe, and just to keep you informed on what you need to know as the snow rolls into our area. We'll be back here in just 2 minutes here on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. Welcome back here on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. I'm Nick Sturtevant. We want to head back to Washington, D.C., where Fed Chair Jerome Powell is giving us updates on the recent announcement of interest rates from the Fed. Again, he is in Washington, D.C. right now, making that announcement and having a press conference, also answering questions from reporters. Let's take a listen in.
Have overall not really budged that much?
I wouldn't say that. The thing is, technically, higher longer-term rates means less accommodative financial conditions. But remember, many things move longer-term rates. It's not mostly what happens on the short end. There can be effects of longer-term rates from our moving our policy around, but it's much more assessments of the fiscal path and fiscal policies and risks and things like that that move the 10-year around. You can look back at and find periods where we've been very actively moving the policy rate over the course of a year, and over the course of that year, the 10-year is exactly where it started. So there's not a tight link between 10-year rates and the overnight rate.
Elizabeth. Thanks so much, Elizabeth Schulze with ABC News. Republican Senator Tom Tillis, who sits on the Senate Banking Committee, said he will block any Fed nominee, including the chair, until this investigation into you is resolved. Do you support this move by the senator, and what conversations have you had with the senator?
I've got nothing for you on that.
More broadly, what would happen to American households if the Federal Reserve loses its ability to operate independent from politics?
So really, the point of independence is not to protect policymakers or anything like that. It just is that every advanced economy democracy in the world has come around to this common practice. It's just an institutional arrangement that has served the people well, and that is to have a separation between to not have direct elected official control over the setting of monetary policy. And the reason is that monetary policy can be used, through an election cycle to affect the economy in a way that will be politically worthwhile. So I'm not talking about the U.S. context. This is every advanced economy democracy of any size. So it's a good practice. It's pretty much everywhere among countries that look at all like the United States. And I think if you lose that, first of all, it would be hard to restore the credibility of the institution if people lose their faith that we're making decisions, only on the basis of our assessment of what's best for everyone, for the wide public, rather than trying to benefit one group or another. If you lose that, it's going to be hard to retain it. And we haven't lost it. I don't believe we will. I certainly hope we won't. But it's very important, and the reason it's important is that it's enabled central banks generally not to be perfect, but to serve the public well.
You're confident it can maintain that independence at this point?
Yes. I'm strongly committed to that, and so are my colleagues.
Archie.
Archie Hall from The Economist. On that sort of stabilization of the labour market question, how much do you see the weakening we saw over the past 6 months, a year, as a kind of data mirage around immigration and the government shutdown and so on that's now resolved? Or how much have we seen a kind of real underlying firming up in the state of the labour market, do you think?
Well, part of it is, to your point, part of it just is that labor supply, growth in labor supply has come to essentially a halt from a fairly fast clip of growth over the last couple of years, driven by immigration, and then the halt being driven by a very sudden stop in immigration. So many outcomes were possible with that. Supply came way down. It turns out that demand for labor also came down a very similar amount, maybe just a little bit more, which is why the unemployment rate has gone up. So I don't know whether that's a coincidence or not, but that's what's happened with that part. But if you look at other things, like, for example, just to pick a couple, the Conference Board's measure of job availability that came out, I don't know, was it yesterday or today? But it shows, it's a survey showing that workers feel like job availability it's a very low reading. Just one reading, but it's an indication of softening. People part-time for economic reasons, which is a category within the broader U6 category, measure has moved up significantly. So there are lots of, and I could go on and on, there are lots of little places that suggest that the labor market has softened. But you're right, part of payroll jobs softening is that both the supply and demand for labor has come down. Growth in those two have come down. So that makes it a difficult time to read the labor market. So imagine they both came down a lot to the point where there is no job growth. Is that full employment? In a sense, it is. If demand and supply are in balance, that you could say that's full employment. At the same time, do we really feel like that's a maximum employment economy? It's very challenging and quite unusual situation.
Thanks. And one more on growth and the kind of strong growth outlook, your strengthening growth outlook you're now seeing. How much of that is the fiscal stimulus we're seeing from the beautiful bill, the tax cuts, and all of that?
So you're seeing it already. You don't have much of the fiscal. I think the outlook, you're right. It's financial conditions, and it's fiscal policy for 26. But you've got strong consumption that's been happening before financial conditions have been supportive, but before the fiscal effects really are shown. So essentially, the economy has once again surprised us with its strength, not for the first time. And consumer spending, although it's uneven across income categories, but consumer spending overall numbers are good, and we're benefiting from the AI build out of data centers. That's another thing we're benefiting from. But the economy overall, growth is on a solid footing. It looks like, and it's not just those things. It's just the consumer is filling out surveys that sound really negative and then spending. So there's been a disconnect for some time between downbeat surveys and reasonably good spending data.
Thanks, Chair Powell. Christine Romans from NBC News. You talked about how consumer spending is uneven. The president calls inflation defeated and solved. The FOMC says it's a somewhat elevated inflation. But you talked about those customer survey or those consumer sentiment surveys and public opinion polls that show that most families say the cost of living is still issue number one. What is the conversation around the table with your colleagues about how wealthier consumers seem to be driving so much of the economy, and why so many families still feel like they just can't make ends meet after 5 years of rising prices? What is that discussion like?
So a couple things. One, there's something to it in that we know that higher income households that tend to own real estate and tend to own stocks, securities, and those assets have been going up in value, and increases in wealth do support spending over time. So, and that's clearly a part of the story. We also know that for some time now, for a year or more, we've been hearing from retailers, for example, that serve lower income customers, whether it be food or the big box stores or anything. They're saying the same thing, which is our consumers are looking to economize. They're trading down from brands, and they're buying less, and it's changing their buying habits and that kind of thing. So we're seeing that, and that is a reality of what we're seeing. They're still consuming, but they're feeling it in a different way. I would say more broadly on affordability, we have a vast network through the reserve banks and also through the Board of Governors, where we talk to small and large businesses and households, and so we do hear a lot about affordability, and we take that very seriously, and we take it to heart, because one of our jobs is price stability, and so the best thing we can do for people who are feeling that squeeze is to keep inflation under control, and frankly, to finish the job of getting inflation back down to 2%.
You mentioned the AI build-out as being positive for economic growth this year. I wonder, as you look at the weakest year last year for job creation of a non-recession year since like 2003, are you concerned about AI maybe supplanting more entry-level work and entry-level jobs, and how does that play into what you're watching about the labor market?
So everyone, of course, is watching AI and the deployment, and trying to understand exactly what's happening. And there's a wide range of possibilities. It's hard to say. And of course, anyone who uses it is amazed at what it can accomplish, right? So every technological wave will eliminate some jobs and create other jobs. And it's always been the case. If you look back, wave after wave after wave, there will be some disruption, but ultimately technology increases productivity, which is the basis for rising wages. And it may not all happen immediately, but over time, it's what enables incomes to rise over time, is rising productivity. So and we always ask, well, this is going to be different, is it going to be different? And we don't know. And we may, in any case, see in the short term jobs that are being eliminated by the capabilities of AI. We may see that. We just don't know what the overall effect is going to be. So how to think about it in macroeconomic terms, it's very hard. We can look at the aggregate data. We can analyze, for example, there is some connection, it appears, between the low hiring rate for recent college grads and AI, but it's not the main or only driver. You hear large companies, though, many of them saying that they either won't be hiring for some time, or that they're hiring less, or that they're laying people off, and they tend to refer to AI when they do that. So we're all watching and learning, and it could certainly have pretty significant effects on the economy, the workforce, and our society.
All right, and there you have it. Fed Chair Jerome Powell speaking right now as the Fed has decided to hold interest rates steady for the first time since July, although there were two governors who were part of this decision that dissented and would rather have seen a quarter-point cut. Nevertheless, this is the first time since July, once again, that the central bank has chosen to keep its current cycle in place. Let's go ahead and turn to some local headlines right now. We have our Anna King, who's been keeping an eye on the dialogue surrounding pretty controversial education bill. We're hearing from folks who are for this and folks who are against this. Anna's joining us right now to talk about this piece that you're putting together for later tonight here on WCNC Plus. This is House Bill 4762. Tell us about this and talk about some of the conversation that we're seeing around it right now.
Yeah, House Bill 4762 is gaining some momentum right now. It just moved through the House and was pushed through. Basically, it is hitting on the argument of the separation of church and state all over again. So those who are for the bill are pushing for the Ten Commandments to be displayed in classrooms or in public schools. But then also to have chaplains available for students who need them. So students who are looking for that mental health resource. So then those who are against this bill say that that is unfair for students who do not follow that religion or who do not abide by any faith at all. And so that's where the whole back and forth is coming from. And tonight we'll get to hear from both sides of the argument on that.
So we're talking about, certain displays that could be in classrooms. Are we talking like, the Ten Commandments? I guess explain, what this could actually look like in practice.
Yeah, so that was the big thing. Those who are for the bill are saying that it would be the Ten Commandments as a historical document. They're saying that historical documents are often displayed in schools anyway, given the example of the Declaration of Independence, saying that it would just be displayed right alongside those historical documents and those founding documents is what the bill is pushing for.
Yeah, and if we could dive in a bit more too as well about the the school chaplain aspect of this legislation. What would that look like? Is this something where this would be a regular part of everybody's day where there's prayer, or is this something that students would elect to do if they wanted to do this, or this was something that their parents wanted them to do?
Yeah, so this would be completely optional. Parents would have to sign off on this, and it would be people from the community who the school would then elect or pick to serve as that resource for students who need it in the schools. And so basically the parents would, again, have to sign off on it, and it's completely optional for students. It's just those who are opposed to it. I spoke to ACLU today, and they are advocating for those who are opposed to this, saying students who do not follow any religion or faith would feel ostracized in this and will feel left out. And that's just what they are advocating for right now, or they're advocating for them not to feel left out and ostracized in that way.
It's definitely an interesting conversation, one that we've seen, in other states. I remember, hearing some headlines, several months back about, I believe it was Louisiana that they had discussed, adding 10 commandments and into the classroom. And, we've heard even discussions that rose and went through the courts about, prayer on the side of, the football field. So, this is a discussion that keeps popping up again and again. How far along is this bill in the sense that, if folks feel like they support this and they want to tell their lawmakers, yeah, go forward, or if people who are against this say, they want to write to their lawmakers and say, don't support this. How far along is this legislation? Is this early on? Have they even taken any votes yet, or is this still kind of like in a committee situation?
So this is early on, but it's moved through the House right now. ACLU says they have parents who have reached out, or parents and educators and students alike who have all reached out, saying they are opposed to this. So right now they're just hearing from the community, but this has been approved in the House subcommittee.
Okay. All right. Well, we're looking forward to seeing your piece. When can folks see it here on WCNC Plus?
Yes, this will be airing at 4:30 and 5:30 tonight.
Great. All right. Well, we'll see you then. Anna King, thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, folks, and we will take a quick break here. We'll be back in 2 minutes with more Live Impact News. Hey folks, back here in the Live Impact News studio, we will turn back to this live feed of Fed Chair Jerome Powell explaining the recent Fed decision to keep interest rates as they are. This is the first time those rates have been held steady since July. And we heard him talking about expectations for prices and whether tariffs will be having an impact in consumer sentiment. Let's go ahead and see what he has to say.
Gold and silver prices have experienced historic gains of late. And I'm wondering how much attention, if any, you pay to those moves and what message you may take from these significant price increases we've seen for precious metals.
Don't take much message macroeconomically. The argument can be made that we're losing credibility or something. It's simply not the case. If you look at where inflation expectations are, our credibility is right where it needs to be. So we look at those things. We don't get spun up over particular asset price changes, although we do monitor them, of course.
Nicole, for the last question.
Hi, Nicole Goodkind-Barons. Some prominent critics have charged that the Fed's economic models are somewhat backward-looking, but should be more forward-looking, incorporating things like productivity increases from AI. How do you incorporate current and future developments into your analysis and decision making, and do you have an answer to those critics?
Yeah, so by and large, those criticisms, as somebody on the inside, they just don't make sense, and I'll tell you why. Every FOMC participant writes down a forecast every quarter, right? The summary of economic projections, and that's the basis for how we think about the economy. So, and the other thing is, what an economic model can do is it can grind up all the data for the last number of years, 50 years, let's say, and it can identify what are the relationships between variables A, B, C, D, and all that kind of thing. And it can tell you if you change one of those variables, this is what should happen in the macroeconomy. That's just the way it works. However, the structure of the macroeconomy is constantly changing. For example, we hadn't had a pandemic in 100 years. It wasn't in the model, and we knew it from the very beginning. It was not in the model. A trade war of this scope, we'd never had that in 100 years. And so there's great uncertainty at different points. Another thing I'll say is, when it comes to, technological developments that raise potential output, some kind of technological revolution, like happened in the 90s here, and like maybe happening now with AI. We're all over that, and everyone studies those periods, and we're very clear-eyed about the possibility that this higher productivity may persist, and also that it may not. We're not. No one's sitting here unaware of the possibility of higher productivity. We've been talking about it for 3 years. It long predates the current situation. It's been going on for 5 or 6 years. We've had productivity higher. We've been talking about it that whole time. So it's very much on our minds, and we are well aware that higher productivity means higher potential output, and it changes the way you think about potentially inflation, growth, labor market, and all those things. That's all in our models. I mean, if it's just a question of using better models, bring them on. Where are they? We'll take them. But I think, we certainly are in contact with anybody who does economic modeling, and we're always looking to do better at that. But that's how I think about that.
And just a quick follow-up. We've been talking a lot about tariffs and passing through, and we've been talking a lot about them for the past few months. The trade landscape is still in a constant state of flux. Announcements, threats, negotiations, they're all frequently changing. So I'm wondering how you actually track these, what data or channels are most critical to follow this in real time.
Trade?
Yeah, the impact of tariffs and how they're changing.
Yeah, I think our staff has done a really nice job on that, and they've kind of put it together in real time. So as I mentioned, a tariff gets put in place, you can pretty much track its effects on pricing and on everything, and so you build a model up from all of the tariffs. At the beginning, it was very much of a forecast. Now it's every cycle that goes by, it becomes more informed by actual data, and our forecasts were not far off. What changed was, as I think I said earlier, what was implemented was smaller than what was announced. In addition, we didn't see retaliation internationally, and I think people did generally expect that because we saw that in the past, and that really mattered too. And then the other thing is that pass-through didn't know how fast that was going to be to consumers, didn't know how much exporters would take, how much companies in the middle would take, and how much the consumer would take. And it turns out it's a lot of companies in the middle who, by the way, are pretty strongly committed to passing the rest of it through, which is one of the reasons why we need to keep our eye on inflation and not declare victory prematurely.
Thank you.
We're done?
We're done.
Okay. Thank you very much.
All right, and there you have it. Fed Chair Jerome Powell discussing the Fed decision to keep interest rates steady for the first time since this summer. We will, of course, keep an eye on any further decisions to come, but we know the interest rate dialogue has really been a contentious one, considering how the Fed has been moving and also the fact that you've got President Trump, who's been very adamant about trying to see these rates being cut more and more. We'll take a quick break here on Live Impact. We'll be back in 2 minutes with more of your breaking news feeds from around the nation. All right, folks, we're turning now here on Live Impact News to a brand new feed that we are seeing with the Senate Homeland Security Investigations Subcommittee. Looks like we have Richard Blumenthal who's speaking right now. This is a hearing to look at 1 year after the Palisades fire in California. And we understand that this has been a bit of an issue as far as recovery goes with some attempts to try to get more funding and wildfire aid, and that apparently sitting in limbo right now. Let's go ahead and listen in.
Every contract worth $100,000 has delayed critical aid to those survivors. There's no reason for it. There's no precedent. And I would simply urge my colleagues to join me in demanding that FEMA do better. In December, FEMA started terminating additional staff with draft plans showing that up to 85% of its staff, 85% of its staff would be let go. They rescinded it because they were warned about Winter Storm Fern, not clear how long that pause will last. We're dealing with an emergency in the Federal Emergency Management Agency. And I think it will affect communities like Mr. Hawkins and Chief Butler. Mr. Crawford, you've retired, but I think you're sympathetic to the needs of these communities. It is bigger than California. Absolutely right, Mr. Crawford. It is bigger than California. It is national in scope. And my colleague states may not have suffered it personally the way Connecticut, Wisconsin, Florida have, but I think we've all seen FEMA at work, helping local businesses, small businesses, who show up the next morning and they find that a flood or hurricane or tornado has ripped apart decades of hard work, destroyed their homes, roofs are gone, and FEMA appears there. At least it did, but not now. So I think this hearing, I hope, will enable us to realize what's at stake here, and it's not red or blue. Tornadoes, hurricanes don't really know the difference between red and blue states. And so I hope we have a bipartisan approach to this issue. Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. I will just remind the ranking member that FEMA funding is included in the DHS appropriation bill, which right now there are threats of shutting down government because they don't want to fund DHS. So we'll see what happens in the next few days in terms of funding DHS and FEMA. Senator Scott.
Chief Butler, I know you're aware the LA Fire Department has been a political lightning rod over the past, few decades. It seems like it's always in the news over some hot button issue like race, gender, or vaccine mandates. Can you talk about the politicization of the department by city leaders, and has it caused any problems?
For me, everything's about operations. And the operations of the department, it's about doing your job, accountability, and all the pieces that make us good at our craft. And so external forces on the department, whether it be the political influence or whatnot, they do have an impact. Personally, for me, what I've always focused on myself is the value that you need to know your job first above all else, and that being good at your job is really what defines our success. In terms of the outside political discussions of the department, racism, discrimination, all those aspects, the department has had a long history of discrimination since the 50s. But what I've seen personally, too, is that it's a department that's pretty diverse and works hard together. For me, the piece of the department most important to me as a command officer is that we get the support to make sure the people that are in the right places are qualified and competent to do the job, and that their qualifications are rigorously scrutinized. Because at the end of the day, that's what matters most. And that's my position on it.
Chief Crawford, early draft of the fire department's after-action report for the Palisades fire contained a frank discussion about the failure to pre-deploy assets and keep firefighters on duty. The final version, however, simply stated that preparations, quote, went above and beyond the standard LA Fire Department pre-deployment matrix, unquote. Do you agree with the early draft or the final version?
Neither. I agree with neither draft. The draft that was put forth that talked about the pre-deployment issues really just doesn't cut it. I do national media commentary, as I said before. In my first interview on the 8th of January, I said specifically that was the first misstep, was not withholding the off-going platoon and sending those folks home. That just does not, it's hard to get people back once you send them home and then have them return back. Secondly, another point to that is using what we call the limited recall, is it allows you to tell the third shift, be prepared to also be able to come in if we get something that's going to expand it beyond our normal scope. So when they decided to pre-deploy and say that in the final after-action review said it went above the matrix, it never showed what the matrix levels are to determine where that stopped. And so if you look at this from a perspective of this was supposed to be a historical, particularly dangerous situation wind event, and I would pretty much survey most of the department and ask them, have they ever heard of what we call a PDS? Probably most have not. Therefore, this cannot be what I said, business as usual. And that's how the department performed that day. And so you need to be going above and beyond even what you are normally, you always ask the question, are we doing enough? And then what's our next level of planning? So it just doesn't cut it to say that we went above and beyond the pre-deployment matrix. It should have been above, should have been something that was off the charts. And in conjunction, and looks like what the other departments were around you were also doing and matched their level of pre-deployment.
Thank you. Yes.
If I could add to that, in the report I provided, I have some bar charts, but basically the department deployed less than half of what was normal and customary. And I just
might want to explain what happened. I mean, you went back and looked at history and then look at what they allocated for the Palisades fire, and it was different.
It was absolutely different. It was absolutely at a scale that I have never seen in my career. And the notion to go above and beyond, I mean, that I think for the community, it's a completely different narrative to see what they lost and then to hear someone they went above and beyond. But I think there was clear departure. There was absolutely clear departure from what deployments had been in the past. And I only picked some of the ones I did. But overall, it was a big departure. And not only that, but I used weather prediction on the prior events that I looked at, and none of them were close to the level of threat of the Palisades. And so I believe that, the report I have here will provide some context to that. It has documentation. But back to my central point is that this was decisions made before the wind arrived, decisions that were the downstream effects of not putting money into infrastructure and resiliency, budget issues. But when the disaster hit, funding at that point is not the issue. And when the disaster hits, you fund it. they'll make me whole, a few months later in front of the council. And it's exactly what we're supposed to do. But I believe to talk about Chief Crawford, I kind of joke that sometimes your first draft is always the best draft, because by the time you get to your final draft, you've pretty much stripped it of stuff that you should have left in it to begin with. And so I did read the draft. I did speak to the individual who wrote the report. And the individual who wrote the report has publicly come out and stated that it was highly unprofessional for the department to have done that to the after-action report. And I think the records show that it's not even speculation on my part. This is exactly what happened.
And neither of your question the hard work of the firefighters. What your question is the leadership that they were given and the resources they were given. But the firefighters on their own, they showed up when they were doing what they were asked to do.
The firefighters on the front line do like they always do. It doesn't matter what you give them. If you give them a buggy, car, whatever, they're going to make it happen. I know that's how it is. That's how it was when I was a young firefighter. I still consider myself one today. Firefighters, they had all the heroism on the front lines. They even lost their own homes. They exposed themselves to a lot of hazards and toxins that'll be long-term effects. I'm a cancer survivor, and the recent passage of Congress and the President of the United States, the HEROES Act, is going to be something that's going to benefit folks like me and families of firefighters out there. So the heroics of the firefighters, it's unbelievable the stuff they do.
Thank you.
Senator Marino.
Mr. Chairman, I know the expression, we shouldn't let facts get in the way of a good story, but we should deal with facts here, especially a committee as important as this. And I just want to clarify for the record that the Secretary of DHS approves contracts over $5 million. I think the ranking member said it was $100,000. So I would ask that the record be corrected unless the ranking member has proof that that's inaccurate.
Without objection.
And then also, by the way, to note for the record that Congress itself, through the appropriations subcommittees, have to approve any awards above $1 million. So this notion that somehow Secretary Noem has micromanaged FEMA to choke it off is just totally and patently false. And I just don't think we should be trafficking in misinformation. To the three of you, if you guys, I'm going to give you a chance to give you a follow-up answer, but just a very quick yes or no. Given the discussion that we just had today, I'll start with you, Mr. Butler. Should Congress cease all funding of FEMA, yes or no?
My answer is to be no.
Definitely no, or maybe no?
No, I mean,
you should.
It's a definite, we need to continue to fund FEMA.
So it'd be a bad idea to defund it?
It would be a bad idea to defund FEMA, that's
Okay.
correct.
And Mr. Crawford, your opinion? Do you think that Congress should defund, meaning provide no more funds to FEMA?
No.
Okay. And Mr. Hawkins?
No.
And I think the ranking member, I'd give him a chance to say, but he could do an infomercial on the importance of FEMA based just on his testimony today. So next question, and I think our chairman brought this up, but I'm sure you're aware that 35% of the budget in the Department of Homeland Security's budget is FEMA. So 35% of what we're going to vote to appropriate of the DHS budget is FEMA. What would be the effects, Mr. Butler, of actually ending all funding to FEMA as of midnight on Saturday? Meaning that we're in the middle of a tough winter situation. We got a cyclone heading to New York and Boston. Who knows what other disasters are in play around the country. And of course, California is always proud to be incompetently step into a crisis. What would be the implications of no more FEMA funding as of Saturday at midnight from your perspective on the ground?
I think it would have a long-term impact on fire operations. But also, I think it's what I see funding from FEMA that affects local agencies like us is the Homeland Security grants that provide us all the advanced equipment, training, and whatnot. But stopping FEMA funding will definitely impact the fire operations.
Would it be hyperbolic, Mr. Crawford, to say that ending FEMA funding could cost the lives of American citizens en masse?
Well, when the storm hits, your local people are going to be responding. And so, FEMA obviously is not there at the time of the incident actually occurs. It's the aftermath that when it happens. And so the cascading effect you will see that will come down later.
So lives could be lost.
Well,
If you don't have shelter.
Any of that's a potential, yes. If it has to do with sheltering, it has to do with, with the long-term effects of housing. And so, yeah, that's going to cause problems and issues. But I do believe that because it's the local people that starts first, you don't see it immediately. It's the cascading effect. So when the cameras are gone away and everyone's gone home, when the smoke is cleared, that's when you start to see the effects of, lack of FEMA funding.
And Mr. Hawkins, your view, what would be the implications of not funding FEMA as of Saturday at midnight?
It would have an impact on local emergency managers, local fire.
Add some adjectives, right? It would be a slight impact, catastrophic impact, horrible impact, negligible impact.
It really depends on the community you're talking about. Different communities.
So not having FEMA would have a depends impact? So if FEMA just no longer had any money, it's shut down completely. You're saying it depends? So if you have a huge snowstorm that could be catastrophic to the coast in Massachusetts or Connecticut, it might impact people?
No, if there was a major disaster, yes, obviously if there was no FEMA funding, that would be in fact impactful to that community. But on a steady state operation, much like the other two chiefs had said, yes, there would be an impact to communities across our nation.
Yeah, and Mr. Chairman, I think it's just really important to emphasize that what we're talking about today, it's Wednesday, January 28th, that the Democrats right now are going to make a decision whether to shut down the federal government, which would end the funding for FEMA, because they're mad about ICE operations that are fully funded for the next 4 years. So talk about cutting your nose off to spite your face. It's cutting your nose, your ears, and everything else. And they're going to put American lives at risk. Senator Scott, when you were governor, did you know when a hurricane was going to hit? Did it set an appointment on your calendar? You just don't know. Saturday midnight could come and go. We could be sitting here next week and have a major catastrophe in this country. And the Democrats are playing with the lives of millions of Americans by even talking about the idea of not approving a DHS funding bill, of which a third of it goes to FEMA, and none of it which will affect the funding of ICE. And I think it's just extraordinarily important. You made the point, Mr. Chairman, and I'm just highlighting it, how grotesquely irresponsible that is, especially disingenuous, coming from the ranking member who's doing an infomercial on the importance of FEMA. That's all I have to say.
Thanks, Senator Marino. Senator Scott has a final question.
So,
All right, folks, and we'll take a quick break. We will return. If this feed's still going, we'll bring you back here. But we do have a couple other ones that we're watching. So stay tuned. Back in 2. We'll see you on the other side. All right, folks, thanks for sticking with us here on Live Impact News. We will indeed return to this Senate subcommittee meeting, initially discussing California wildfires and Palisades recovery funding. We've kind of seen the discussion evolve to the larger dialogue we're seeing about funding for DHS. And this is tied to a lot of the controversy that we're seeing over the ICE operations and some lawmakers saying that they don't want to fund DHS anymore, potentially without any guardrails for ICE. And then we're seeing the counterpoint here. Well, FEMA is part of DHS too. Let's listen in.
Thank you, Senator. I'd just like to say this is a really important issue for our local communities, for our local emergency managers, our local firefighters, local law enforcement who are in our communities every day trying to do our best to keep our communities safe and protect our neighbors. And the work that we do across the board, from the local level to the state level to the federal level, is critically important. And whether that funding comes from your local community that is providing your emergency management staff and information, whether there are state grants or federal grants that support what you're doing, I don't want us to forget how important it is to support our local communities and our local emergency managers. Like we've said, disasters start and end locally, and that's really important. And it takes a whole spectrum of response, and that includes federal funding, state partnership, and local leadership.
Well, again, I want to thank all the witnesses. You can't cure incompetence with money unless you remove the incompetence, unless you expose it and make sure those individuals who aren't qualified, who are incompetent, are no longer serving those roles. And I think that's the main part of this investigation, is to expose what happened, name names, identify the incompetence so it doesn't happen again. Again, I think the testimony said we don't want to, this shouldn't be a blame game. It has to be a blame game. You can't avoid that. If you doctor after action reports, you're never going to get to the truth. You'll never solve it for the next time. You won't prevent this in the future. So no, this is absolutely, people have to be held accountable. People lost their lives. The property damage is profound. So this is a serious investigation. Again, it's not one I would have undertaken. I appreciate the fact that Senator Scott was awakened to the need here, because it's not being undertaken by California and Los Angeles officials. It's simply not. It's a whitewash. So we intend to get the answers. We need to find out who's accountable. This will probably be transcribed interviews. We need documents. We need to get to the bottom of this so we can prevent this disaster, this preventable disaster, from happening again. But with that, the hearing record will remain open for 15 days until Thursday, February 12th, 2000.
All right, some issues with the feed. Sorry about that, folks. We're going to work on getting that signal going again, but probably a great time to take a break. In 2 minutes, we'll return, hopefully with this feed up and running. We appreciate your patience. All right, folks, we unfortunately lost that Senate committee feed in total, so we're going to turn now to one actually that's happening right here in our area here in Charlotte, North Carolina. We've got the Mecklenburg County Commissioners who are having their retreat where they kind of get together and discuss plans and priorities and state of the county. So let's go ahead and listen in. We're getting a good look into their dialogue.
Our families in like a second chance type of situation. If a family owes over $10,000 in debt to an apartment complex, they will not be able to move into another apartment complex. So again, just addressing the needs of the family. Food pantries, we use Nourish Up often, take them to go pick the groceries up if need be. We provide transportation to court, to just about anything that they may need. No, we're not an Uber, but we do help in those areas. So just taking that holistic approach and wrapping around the family. Mom may say, you know, I'm tired. I don't know what to do. She's at her wit's end. We'll connect her with the therapist that can help her. We have parent groups that we work with YRC Court that helps our families with those resources as well. So we just want to see what they need and connect them to those resources.
Those real stories, Hope, are very important and very powerful when you hear it from you. So let me move to Dr. Stewart. What has been the key outcome of the Alternatives to Violence program launched by the city?
So there was a report, may have been early December, by the Urban Institute that shared that violent crime rates have declined. Fewer community members have reported witnessing experienced violence. But that's just data points. It goes back to what you just mentioned. It's the storytelling. When you think about this particular demographic, it's understanding everything that Hope just shared, to better understand the impact that they make. When we think about a shooting, we don't think about what happens afterwards. So we have a partnership with Atrium. They're aware of what happens afterwards because they're helping us as well. But it's those stories where we have been able to prevent retaliation. So now I want to share a short story. So there was a young lady in one of our ATV corridors, and she was a victim of domestic violence, and she was pregnant. She wanted to call the police, but she couldn't call the police because if the police came to the home.
All right, folks, we are turning now to a breaking feed we're seeing out of Texas as protesters have marched to an ICE detention facility there in Texas. They say they are demanding the release of 5-year-old Liam Ramos and his father. Liam Ramos is that Minnesota boy we saw kind of went viral when they were taken into custody. He was wearing that little bunny hat with his little Spider-Man backpack. Let's listen in.
A lot of chaos and then also and thankfully everyone came together to
I'm back. Yes, I don't know what happened. I'm sorry.
All right, folks, Vanessa Rufus here in the Live Impact News studio. We believe this reporter's about to give kind of a scene-setting report, so just bear with us. We're going to listen in for just a little bit. She just conducted an interview, too, with someone on site, so maybe she'll also kind of give us a paraphrase of what that person told her.
Had tons of people that came from the vigil over here to the detention center, and they were all lined up here. They were by this yellow line that we see over here, if you want to pan. They were by this yellow tape that you see over here. And then moments ago, we've seen the officers push back, kind of tell everyone to get back. There was a few warnings, and then we saw them with force go in, and then you just seen those grenades flying over the people. That's when I first saw it, and then just moments after you saw the grenade flying is when you felt that effect of those tear gas grenades, the burning, the coughing, your eyes watering. You know, Thankfully, we had lots of water in our work vehicle because it was hard to deal with at that moment. It took a few minutes to actually feel back to normal. We've seen just over here lots of people getting help. Take a look right over here. This person over here is just getting some type of liquid into their eyes. And a lot of people here still have soap, water. So this scene right here is very different from what we've seen earlier. It did clear out. It is much shorter, not as impactful as it was earlier that we've seen. A lot of people did head out. The buses did come and get them, but as you can see over here, it's still very active. We got a lot.
All right, sorry, we just lost that feed. We're going to see if that was kind of a glitch or if they just stopped offering that feed to us. Once again, though, that was San Antonio, Texas area where we saw protesters marching to an ICE detention facility in Dilley. And you heard that reporter kind of talking about some sort of seemingly some escalation between the crowd and agents that might have been there. She was talking about tear gas that was deployed. Of note, the reason why this facility is kind of in the spotlight tonight is this was the facility that 5-year-old Liam Ramos and his father were reportedly taken to. Liam is that Minnesota boy, and you might remember because his picture went viral in the last few days. He's the little boy who he was taken into custody, but that picture was taken of him showing him wearing that little like bunny hat with the ears and the Spider-Man backpack, and really got a lot of folks talking about the tactics of ICE and having some folks who are opposed to the ICE operations that are underway in Minneapolis kind of questioning the use of the young boy in order to try to catch the father. So anyways, they are at this facility, and anti-ICE protesters were there after doing this march at that facility demanding that they be released. And we did recently see that there were reports of a news conference that might potentially happen. So we'll kind of keep an eye for that feed to come back, and we'll keep you updated if we get any more on that front. But we do still have, meantime, this Mecklenburg County retreat that is still underway. So we'll listen back, and it looks like we've got a discussion underway about youth violence and at-risk youth.
I think I'd just come back to earlier statements about, it's about availability and accessibility.
Thank you. Hope?
Yap works.
Well, there it is. Dr. Stewart.
Collaboration is key, and we are looking forward to continuing our great collaboration with the county and with our other partners in CMS so that we can continue to be intentionally impactful for the youth.
Thank you. Dr. Scott?
Youth aren't problems that we're trying to fix. They are partners in prevention.
Thank you. And with that, thank you for the participation, the information, and the conversation. I will toss that back to Derek.
Thank you, Suzanne. Thank you. How about a round of applause? Fantastic panelists. Thank you so much for your honest and candid feedback and discussion on youth violence. Before I turn the discussion over to you, Chair Jarrell, I do want to frame up a few policy questions that county staff would appreciate receiving from the board as you engage in a dialogue with our panelists today. First, as you've heard, youth violence is a very complex issue involving the state, local governments, community partners, and others to tackle, with programs ranging from programs servicing all youth to programs serving only at-risk or justice-involved youth. As of now, as you know, the youth crime or addressing youth crime is not a specific board priority, and we don't have a specific SMART goal attached to our balanced scorecard to date. So in terms of questions to consider, first, what is the most appropriate role for the county to play in addressing youth violence? Second, are existing programs considered effective by the community in improving outcomes for our youth? Third, based on what you heard today, what partnerships or collaborations between stakeholders do you think may be needed to help improve service delivery and outcomes? And finally, are we tracking and measuring the correct goals and KPIs for the county and other stakeholders to properly measure public safety on our balanced scorecard? Chair Jarrell, that concludes my comments. I'll now turn it to you for discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Derek. Thank you, Suzette. Thank you, panelists. We're going to open up to board members, the order that will go in. We're going to start with Commissioner Dunlap, then come to Commissioner Powell, Commissioner YTI, SRM, Griffin, Meyer, Leak, then Altman. So, Commissioner Dunlap, we'll start with you.
Thank you. This was very informative. I learned a lot that I did not know, and it's really interesting how much we're already doing. The question, though, is what more can we do? Because it's obvious that all of the things that are being done, we still have crime being committed by young people in our community. More than anything else, what I would like to see is the crime rate, or the murder rate, should I say, being specific, the murder rate in our community be decreased. And so with all of the programs we have in place now, it is not as effective as I would like to see it. And so what I'd like for you guys to tell me is, what is it that we're not doing that, based on your experience, we ought to be doing to simply reduce the murder rate in our community?
Growing healthy boys.
So while y'all thinking about that, so while you're thinking about that, let me give you another thing, and it's going back to our data collection. Can we track, for example, the kids who are youth involved today that are committing crimes and determine whether or not they were involved in any of these programs or not?
Definitely.
Okay, so we can do that.
Yes. With our program, we have data reports and we have tracking tools that we use.
So one of the things we could do is determine whether or not there's a decrease in the rate among those people who are justice involved.
I'm going to defer that question to Corey, because the state is actually the official sort of record keeper of juvenile justice data, particularly for the court-involved kids. And so I'm going to kick that one to you.
Thank you. Now, with the data, we can get data for just about anything with our juveniles, whether they were involved in any crimes or delinquent acts. Also, if they were GCPC involved with GAP or any other programs, we track everything with our juveniles, how often they commit crimes, if they were involved in any, what areas of town they were, we track everything in those areas. And for your other question, I want to say it in the right way. In my 20 years, the juvenile delinquent acts has always been there. It's going to be there, and that's in any city. The question is, what are we going to do about it? And we have to make changes in how we respond to each incident year by year and with these juveniles. Today, a lot of our issues with some of our more serious crimes are juveniles that have mental health needs, and we can't legally put them places because they have mental health needs that are not addressed. And if we have placements, PRTFs that can address some of these needs, a lot of these juveniles wouldn't commit delinquent acts. If we meet with some of these juveniles earlier in age 12, 13, and 14, instead of waiting until they get 15, 16, and 17, some of this stuff has to happen in the schools. It has to happen in the communities. It has to have programs that get out and get involved. I know we have programs that come to me often that we can do this if we have funding. And that's a lot of what we have to deal with countywide, statewide, is funding. And we know what we have to do with the juveniles, what they need by listening to them. But we have to get out there and get these programs started and changing year by year and not going by what happened in 2020 to see if it's going to work in 2026. It's definitely going to be different, especially with social media and live.
All right, and folks, we are coming up on the 4 o'clock hour, which means WCNC Plus. We'll be having that 4 o'clock news for you just moments away. We do want to take a quick look at stocks, though, as we get closer to the closing bell. Live look at the Dow Jones, which was somewhat flattish today, but seems to be poised to close in positive territory. Of note, the S&P 500 actually touched a record 7,000 level today. But as you might suspect, the Fed decision on interest rates kind of having investors pulling back a bit. So we did see the S&P start to decline shortly after that decision to keep interest rates as is. As we mentioned, we got the 4 o'clock